Working. Well, that's in pretty good shape. Yep, got the right microphone. Got the right camera. Sound check. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Oh, let's see.
Yeah, his response was, "I'm not the only black man in town."
Well, yeah. Okay. Sound and video okay. Alrighty. Okay. See, you made it back, Dave. Oh, alrighty. So this week, when it came to gold mining, all we did was check out the snow situation in a couple spots and go for a couple nice groups. We probably put about 500 miles on that van in 2 days. Thank you, Lauren. But looks like the snow situation is pretty much as expected. So I think the vehicle is the restriction right now. And we'll see how the road to the mill fares. I'll have to go check that out in the next couple of days, see how it's doing, because we really need to get out there and get working on those crushers and stuff. And I'd like to start. I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of water on those liners, and I'd like to get that pumped off as soon as possible. Anywho, so let's see. Hello, Tricky. How's it going? Yeah, I'll check on that there. And if we see Rock showing up, we'll ask him. He's got a lot of experience doing that. Tricky's got storms coming, huh? Yeah, I heard something about a typhoon building over there. I think it was more in Australia, but I don't know which way they track. Oh, we got not a hurricane here, but it is a little windy. You might hear a little whistling.
We have a high wind advisory on.
A high wind advisory, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds about right.
So no holding doors open for me.
Yeah, no holding doors. Absolutely. So, say when it came to mining, that was about all we did today. Yep, we looked it up when we got back, and those were the crazies, and the ones on the other side were the Bridger Mountains. I forgot which the ones were directly south. I forgot the name of that. But yeah, there's a lot of mountain ranges around here. Everywhere you look, there's another mountain range. Oh, I know where the tobacco roots, the Elkhorns, the Boulders. What were the ones just north of Helena again? Forget those. Oh well.
The big belts.
Yeah, we got the big belts, but no, just north of us, there's those little ones right there.
The Nevadas? No.
Yeah, I forget what the name was.
The Nevadas are where top of the hill is, according to you.
Yeah. So anyhow, so I said we had a good time. We drove some roads we'd never been on before, saw some scenery we'd never seen before, had a good old time. Saw a bunch of elk, a bunch of antelope, and a fair number of deer. And didn't hit anything. Now, today, I was talking to someone yesterday, and it occurred to me, not that we've seen Tricky. Of course, I haven't seen a bear up here yet. They're not terribly common. But as I was talking to someone, and it occurred to me that it would not be a bad idea to just kind of go over again, because every 6 months we have new people and this and that, the important steps when starting a new project to make sure you don't go down a very expensive dead end. Okay. And it's very frustrating because when you are starting a project, unless you've already got a bunch of equipment and stuff, or you're filthy rich or whatever, you want to get, you want to get to mining and processing. You want gold. Okay. That's the natural human motivation to do it in the first place. But I mean, it's just the emotion. The problem is that can very quickly lead you to massive inefficiencies because, especially with hard rock gold, although to some extent placer gold also, um, the situation is so complicated with so many variables that there's no way to know a good answer from the get go. You don't know how much rock you have with how much gold, what it's going to take to get the gold out of the rock. All these sort of things are really unknowns at the beginning. Now, in a couple of months, we're going to be starting a brand new project, so I can kind of illustrate this. Take care, Tricky. See you in a bit. So, the most common significant mistake I see out there when it comes to people who are actually trying to put something in product, aside from not checking to make sure the information you get is correct from the person who's selling you the claim or whatever, is insufficient testing and research. Now, there's two general areas of testing too. You have the mining and the milling. Okay. You can see up here, this is laboratory and this is ore over here. That's because they're both unknowns. They're both critically important. And they both take time to get a reasonable handle on stuff. So, by necessity, the first thing you have to do is look at the proposed ore body. What are you going to be mining? You're going to need to know what the grade is, what the tonnage is, what the stripping ratio is. How much waste do you have to move for every every ton of ore? In the case of Montana B, it turned out to be roughly 2 parts waste to 1 part ore. Now, Eva and I mined 13 and a half tons, mined and processed 13 and a half tons last season. So that means we actually moved pretty darn close to 50 tons or more of material last year. But the vast majority of it was waste. So these things are stuff you have to know. As you're gathering some samples, you're also trying to get an idea of things like ground control. How hard is the rock? How easy is it going to be to mine it? How much time and money are you going to have to spend on ground support or not, depending. Again, these are all variables. These are all extremely important variables. Now, I'm going to I'm going to put a link in here in just a minute. Let's see. Let me get it. And this is, I think it's this one here. Yep, there it is. Okay. This is my website that is very poorly maintained. But what it has on it is it's got a couple of things. Let me click that so that it disappears. I got project checklist. This will be the things that you need to actually look at when you've got a new project. And it's got like 4 pages. So it gives you the important stuff you got to kind of figure out. I've got mining terms. I have conversion factors. And something that's really useful in this aspect are the mining project economics estimator. Now, That right there, that link will get you to that. And so you can actually just punch in numbers. What is your uh, mining cost? What's your tonnage? Actually, you don't even need the tonnage. The question is how wide, how long, how deep, and it will figure that out for you. So this will help you get an idea when you're looking at a new project or whatever. Look at that website first and get an idea what you need to look for, what you need to evaluate, what you need, information you need to acquire, and then you can put it in the economics estimator so that you can then get a good idea whether it looks plausibly profitable. Okay. Now, if you're just doing something for the fun of it, you don't need to worry about that. But if you want to try and make money, that's really, really important. Use the estimator, get a good idea. If you can't figure out a way to make it profitable, walk to the next project. Either that or try and figure out a way. But don't go down the blind alley of I'm going to do this and make money. Okay. Montana B, the grade is not where we need it to be. The tonnage is not where we need it to be. If the grade doesn't improve, then we may have to bail on that one. We'll find out in a few weeks of effort where we're at on that particular project. But we may very well walk away because we just, can't make money. Got to go somewhere else. Got top of the hill lined up. We got, Jeff Kablock has some interesting stuff possibly. There's other things around here. But if you need to make money off of it, use the estimator. Now, this is the ore part of the whole thing. Once you've got your presumed ore, and remember, ore is rock from which the valuable mineral can be extracted at a profit. If you can't do it at a profit, it's not ore. Sorry, it's mineralized rock. Okay. But anyhow, once you know what your theoretical ore for the future is, the mineralized rock you want to process, now you got to do this part over here. You have to do the metallurgical testing, the extraction testing. Okay. In the case of ore and hard rock, that means you're going to have to crush it and try different separation techniques, different grind sizes, things like that. See how they work, see what the costs estimate out to be. In our case, our first idea with Montana B was crush it and do a gravity extraction. I got a pretty efficient gravity extraction device that I've made. It's simple, it's inexpensive, it's got reasonably good throughput, and it'll get down to 500 mesh gold with high efficiency. Wasn't working. That's kind of shocking, but I'm getting like 20% recovery. What the hell? I did a settling test. The stuff that floated in the water, that was just in the water, was higher grade than the sand that settled to the bottom real quick. Holy crap. That's some pretty floaty gold. Then we went and did some rather expensive testing over at Montana Tech. That was a $1,000 test, but it let us know exactly what the problem was. Where is it? This information here is $1,000 worth of information. They did electron microscope studies of various grind sizes. They would take the screened material of different sizes, put it in an epoxy matrix, slice it, polish it, and use a electron microscope. Those are actual gold particles as imaged by the electron microscope. Those are the gangue particles and the minerals that held the gold particles.
And it should be noted that doing that $1,000 or $1,200 worth of testing probably saved us tens of thousands because we didn't just go out and buy equipment.
Yeah. And so what the actual bottom line is these gold particles, let me get a good picture, that they could image. Well, here's some. The shiny things are the gold particles, you know. The gold, 80% of it was less than 2,000 mesh. Well, now we knew why it wouldn't settle. All of a sudden, the entire plan of attack changed. Okay? That testing just completely redirected, hey, Richard, the entire plan of attack. Because now it's like we cannot get, we did try one other thing before we went to leaching, which was since the gold seemed associated with the iron minerals, could we, separate the iron minerals and then like leach it that way? Go ahead, Tom. See if I care. Anyhow, so that very quickly moved us in an entirely different channel of operation. Now, that's a really expensive test. We didn't do it, though, just out of the clear blue sky. We did it because we had cheap tests that indicated we had a major problem. So, that's right, Tom. Besides, I got 1,500 miles between you and me, and it's cold up here. Ha ha! I know I'm safe. Anyhow, so we had tried a good quality gravity separation, very low efficiencies, 20% recovery. I did hand panning. Now, this is something that's really cheap that you can do and get a really good idea of what's up. And that's, you pulverize the rock, you screen it to like 100 mesh, okay, 100 mesh minus. Now you know you've got a good grind size of your entire sample. You blend it, you split it, you send a sample off for analysis. That's your head assay. That's the raw material you're testing. Then you take your gold pan and you pan it down, and you're not trying to pan down to the gold, okay? You assume that getting down to the gold, trying to get it clean, is going to be very inefficient and you're going to lose some. But you pan like 90% of the material off. You pan, you get a little bit off, then you pan and a little bit off like that, till like you've eliminated 80, 90% of the material. The gold should be in that remaining 10 to 20%, okay, if it's free gold. Because it's 100 mesh minus, it should be free gold. No guarantees, okay? But if that doesn't work, you've got another problem you have to address, and you need to know about it early. So you panned off your 80% is tailings, 20% is concentrates. Then you do a fire assay on both of those. Okay, you dry it, send it off for assay. And in theory, if you've got good liberation, if the crushing has actually liberated the gold particles, then that gravity separation, unless they're really, really small, should get them in that 10 to 20% leftover cons and not that 80 to 90% tailings. If that doesn't work, hey, outlier, if it doesn't work, you have a problem. It's time to call a timeout, get a huddle, and rethink the game plan. I'll get that in just a second, Shaggy. So at that point, with relatively inexpensive techniques, In this case, we got free fire assays, $45 each. The guy I'm using, okay, one for the head, one for the tailings, one for the concentrates. Okay, with that data, and what you should do is in your tailings, let the silt settle down too, and then dry it off so you don't lose any of the really fine silt either. That may be where the gold is going. If you can afford the extra assay, do that as a separate sample. The stuff that after a minute of settling doesn't settle, kind of pour that off. Wait for a week. Do some decantation, and get that and send it off separately. That's what we had to do, and that stuff was the best stuff. It's like, okay, the gold is floating. It was pretty freaking obvious. Okay. Then we had to figure out why and what we could do. So because we had the resource, because we had Center for Advanced Material Processing 70 miles away, we went down there. The claim owner thought it was worthwhile. We did the test. We then found out what the problem was. Now we could address it. Okay, when do you not need to send assays in? In hard rock gold, never. Pretty much never. Okay, if you can do assays yourself, that's fine. If you have a project where you can't afford a couple $100 in assays, things are really, really tight. Okay, you probably won't be able to do hard rock. You're probably going to be doing placer anyway, and that's not the assays don't work on placer anyway. For placer, careful panning will give you the information you need. However, in hard rock, in certain very unusual conditions, let's say you have the equipment and you got an ore that gives you pretty good results with a simple gravity separation at a grind that you've already done, you can kind of stockpile your tailings. Don't throw them away because you don't know what's in them, and then do assays later. But that would be an extremely unusual situation, and it only because you're already getting 2 ounces to the ton recovery anyhow. You may have 3 ounces to the ton left in your tailings and you don't know it. But, if you're doing okay so far and you're not throwing anything away, you can wait. As a general rule, if you're doing hard rock, you're going to need to do at least a few assays. Okay. Just, figure that. It's very annoying. This is what I got back to the original thing. This is where people, they get in a hurry. And one of the reasons is because sampling and assaying is expensive and just costs you money. It doesn't make you a dime initially. Very frustrating from an emotional human standpoint. It's annoying as heck. However, if you don't do it, you can get burned. It's kind of like changing the oil in your engine. Does anyone like changing the oil in their engine? No, then why do you do it? Otherwise, you're changing an engine or walking. Your choice. It's the best of unpleasant alternatives. Okay, it's your best option. It's not one you necessarily like. Yeah, exactly, Dave. It is a necessary evil. You can minimize it to some extent. You can be more efficient or more reckless with it, depending upon your budget and the mentality of the person who's got the purse strings. But basically, you're going to have to do some assaying. Okay. So you've now tested the ore initially to see if it'll gravity separate. Hey, John, because that's the easiest separation. If you can gravity separate it, go for it. Okay. Now, without fire assaying, or without assaying, you can do it other ways too. Without assaying, you cannot determine how much you lost in your tailings. It could be a very modest amount. In the case of Ryan's ore down in Tucson, it's about 15%. I was getting a pretty darn good recovery, just gravity separation. And for the mill, by the way, Jeff, how's it going? Last week, did you say that you have the drum lum in mind, or was that did I just mistake that? Were you just giving me that information to show me something else? I'm not sure about that, but I know it's not an Indian Creek. It's up by Marysville. Oh, a friend has it. Okay, cool. Is he looking for someone to do some milling? If he is, I'd like to talk to him. um, but anyhow, so if the gravity separation will work well, fine. Save your tailings, do your gravity separation, and focus on mining and things like that. Okay. In our case, that didn't work. Gravity separation was relatively inefficient. This is the rule rather than the exception. And okay, Jeff, thank you. In hard rock mines, you rarely get a good recovery just with a gravity separation or just with a flotation. Okay. Almost always you got significant to outrageous losses if you don't go to leaching with hard rock. Okay. A good efficient gravity separating hard rock ore is, far from unknown, but it's not the general rule. You need to take into account, we may be leaching this later, sort of thing, and then you'll be sampling your tailings. You may be able to run a second stage of separation and get enough that way. I think it has to do with temperature and stuff, Alex. I'm not sure. I'm from Arizona. It's not something I grew up with, so it's kind of one of the great mysteries of the universe to me. But it looks like it'll be melted by the time we get the truck running well. So this is where this part here, you're doing your laboratory scale extraction testing. Okay. This is really important because this is a lot cheaper than pilot scale testing. Okay. And that's where you want to make your mistakes. This is where you want to find out your information. The particular people are talking to did a, more than a quarter-ton sample to see how things worked out. That gets really expensive, to say nothing of what it takes to get the equipment to process a quarter-ton sample. Okay. And they still don't know what their grind size should be. This is where you find out your grind size, not down here. Because how do you know what crushing and grinding equipment to get if you don't know what size you're trying to grind it? Alex says that the Yellowstone flooding from last year is probably going to repeat. Wonderful. My family's going to be here in a little over a month, and they want to go see Yellowstone when we're done putting the new engine in the truck. Interesting. We shall see what happens. But anyhow, so don't skimp on this. The odds are it will turn around, bite you in the ass, and take a big chunk of flesh. Okay?
Always buy equipment last.
And what you need to do is do that testing so you get the right equipment and you can assemble it in the proper sequence and things like that. Otherwise, you're going to wind up making minor changes to something that costs you $5,000 or $10,000 to do a minor change, instead of something that costs you $10 to do a minor change. Very inefficient. Also, in the laboratory scale and sometimes in the pilot scale, don't be afraid to do it by hand, because again, you don't know all the parameters yet. Okay. So like at our mill, I'm crushing the rock in the RC46 jaw, wheelbarrowing it over to the Stutenroth, shoveling it into the Stutenroth, by hand, goes over a screen, gets ground, then goes back into the hopper, if the oversize, and like that, so that I don't have to worry about a bunch of conveyors and getting everything balanced. And I found that I really don't like the Stutenroth when it comes to any kind of where it's got just very much moisture in it at all. Really causes problems. It hangs up in that. Okay, and you got a freaking 300-pound rotor spinning at over 1,000 RPM, and you want to try and clean a plug out. Yeah, that can get interesting. So that's why a lot of the stuff I do out at the mill is by hand. Because if you're running stuff into a jaw crusher, that's then going up a conveyor to a Stutenroth, which is then going over a screen, which is then being recycled back to the Stutenroth. And the Stutenroth plugs, how many things do you have to shut down quickly? See? And that's, I say, you can eliminate a lot of expense, a lot of construction time, a lot of complexity, and a lot of headaches by simply accepting the fact you're going to need to get a little more exercise. I can use the exercise. I can run that Stutenroth at 500 pounds an hour, which is all it'll actually do with the recirculation circuit I've got. You know, I'm screening it at 20 mesh, and I can feed that thing basically as fast as it'll take it and run reliably by hand, take the product, dump it in the tank by hand, and work nonstop. I mean, with good dry ore that's just grinding as fast as that thing will go. Why do I need mechanical stuff? Okay. I can do it by hand. When things go wrong, it's easy to just turn off the feeder and work on it. I don't have to shut down that crusher and then this conveyor. And then, I mean, because you have to start at the beginning. If you're at the Stutenroth and something goes wrong and you shut off the input conveyor, well, now the jaw crusher is going to back up. You know, you need to shut down a system, you know, starting at one end and working toward the other. Complexity, cost, pain in the butt. I can make that machine run as fast as it can by hand. Just do it by hand. Okay. Hi, blind dude. Then once you've got everything figured out and you know exactly what all your parameters are, then you can worry about putting conveyors in and things like that. Because now you can, for example, recognize, oh, that's too sticky. That's going to cause, we're just going to have to put that someplace and let it dry for a while. Otherwise, everything's just going to go to hell. You know, that sort of thing. But you get that information during the pilot scale testing. Now, things like grind size, separation technique, recovery percentages, wear rates. You know, if we got a Stutenroth, we're feeding rock through it. What's the wear cost per hour? Actually, it's not too bad. Okay. But we didn't know that until we started running it through. Different rock is going to have different kinds of wear rates, and the different size will have different. We're putting about 1/2 inch minus through it, outlier. Okay. That's another thing. The larger the feed size in an impact mill, the higher the wear rate. Because as that rotor's coming around and hitting it, a bigger rock takes a bigger divot out of your wear part. So that's it. I mean, you can run bigger rock. It'll slow you down. It'll increase your wear rate. Because the RC46 jaw, right now the toggle's worn, so it's giving about a 1/2 inch minus. Once we can get out there and get it over to Lauren's house for some work, we need to repair the toggle and everything to choke that back down to about a 1/4 inch max gap. Okay. It's just worn quite a lot. Again, even I put 13.5 tons through it this season. Put a lot of wear on that toggle plate. So we just need to fix it up. So let's say these are the sort of things that you find out During the laboratory testing, you find out what works. During the pilot scale testing, you find out how it works. What are your throughputs? What are your wear rates? What are your costs? What's the problems with that ore? Say, for example, that Stutenroth is not like sticky ore. I didn't know that till I'd run a Stutenroth. My impact mill is not nearly as sensitive to the moisture content as the Stutenroth is, but it is sensitive to the moisture content. If it is too sticky, it's a problem. Depending upon your situation, you may go with a wet grinding setup. Let's suppose that we were in a wet mine. Well, either we're going to have to, dry the ore. I mean, a dedicated drying process, either artificial heat or just under a big tarp and let it air dry. Or what? I mean, again, more cost, more hassle, more reduction in throughput. Or you can go to wet flushing. You just put so much water in it that it's no longer sticky. It's water with some dirt in it. Okay, that has its own set of issues. Dust is not one of them, though. So that can be an issue too, especially if, say, you had a fairly toxic ore. If it had a lot of lead or arsenic or something, you might need to run wet because you just can't have that kind of dust. Or you may need to do other things to contain the dust. This is where all this testing comes in. You don't want to be sitting there with your theoretical 5 ton per hour mill and trying to make little tweaks. You know, uh, gets even more expensive when it's big tweaks. It's like, wow, that doesn't work. At maximum rate, like that 2 ton an hour Stutenroth mill, it's rated 2 tons per hour. Okay. Under ideal conditions, I bet you could throw 2 tons an hour into it and it would come out, but it's not fully ground. So you have to take into account screening and recirculation. What does that do to your throughput? In my opinion, that 2 ton an hour Stutenroth mill rated, nameplate capacity, that's what they call it, the nameplate capacity, 2 tons per hour, is actually about a 500 ton an hour mill with full recirculation. Sorry, 500 pounds an hour. Thank you, little one. 500 pounds an hour, quarter-ton an hour at full recirculation, getting it down to 20 or 30, 100% passing 20 or 30 mesh. Okay. At least with my ore. Some ore is going to be a lot softer, some's going to be harder. That number will change. Your nameplate of the machine does not necessarily have a whole lot of relationship to what it can actually do with your ore under your conditions. Okay. Moisture content, hardness of the rock, stickiness of it. Is there a lot of clay or things like that? Or do you just smack it and it just shatters? And it just goes poof. Okay. Um, Makes a huge, huge difference. I mean, you could have a variation of at least 4-to-1 without a problem, maybe up to 10-to-1 in the extremes. Exact same equipment. Yeah, that's true. You do want to make sure you stay within the safety limits as designed. For example, horsepower limits, uh, electrical limits. Make sure everything is properly fused and grounded and all that other stuff. But this is where all this pilot scale testing will tell you, okay, if I've got an impact mill, like say you wanted to go there, Stutenroth makes them up to 8 tons an hour. Okay. And it's not a bad mill. I'm a little bit annoyed at the inlet situation, and there is no integral classification system. Okay. But is it robust? Hell yeah. You know, does it get a lot of work done without needing maintenance? Hell yeah. Say, not a bad machine, but it has its limitations. Exactly, blind dude. So I say that sort of thing. You can then say, okay, if we want to run 2 tons an hour, and our 2 ton an hour mill will run with proper screening and recirculation 500 pounds an hour, you can have pretty good confidence that your 8-ton an hour Stutenroth mill will probably put you in the ballpark of where you need to be. Pretty close. Should be able to make it happen. Okay. Another thing that you should do in this part right here, if you can, if you're not highly knowledgeable about what you're doing, let's say you were thinking of using a Stutenroth mill. Let's say, like a couple of these guys, you're in Arizona, Utah, New Mexico. Call Stutenroth up. Ask, hey, can I bring over several hundred pounds of rock in buckets in the back of my pickup truck and run it? Is he going to do it for free? No, he shouldn't do it for free, but he should do it at a reasonable price. Okay. If somebody's trying to sell you a multi-$1,000 machine, he will usually have one he's using for himself that he can set up and run. I'm sure Mount Baker, same thing. For a price, they'll run your stuff through their mill. Okay. If you're doing something like that, try and make the deal where it's like, okay, we're going to try a sample, bulk sample through your mill. If it works, can I get a discount on the mill? That say you're going to charge me $1,000 to run 1,000 pounds. Okay. And you're going to, I think Mount Baker, the whole system, if you were to buy the whole thing, is somewhere around $100,000 with all the conveyors and sand screw and everything else. It's a pretty complex and thorough system. But I mean, maybe just, okay, I've got a jaw crusher. I need an impact mill and I need a table. So I'd like to come over, like to run 1,000 pounds. How much would it cost? And then could I get a discount? Could I take like half of that off of my purchase if we wind up purchasing from you? Okay. See what kind of negotiation. Certainly, anyone who has confidence in their equipment should be comfortable doing a demonstration for a reasonable price. In other words, they're getting paid enough for their time that they're not grumpy about it. It's like, made $1,000 today. What the hell? That sort of thing. Yes, it's not just good rocks, David, though. You want it to be representative rocks. If you have two radically different types of ore, you might want to run two separate samples, 500 pounds of this, 500 pounds of that, because they may work radically differently. Okay. So these are the sort of things you need to do. We were, Jeff Kablock was talking about the Drumlummon mine. It's got some stuff. They said it was it 200 ounces to the ton silver?
That was pretty darn high.
Something extraordinary like that. That's going to be something where it's a gravity separation to start with,
You hope.
Bring your nastiest. Yeah, Chris, that's a good point. Bring the toughest stuff. Well, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to shock my ore at the rate of 500 pounds an hour. Not sure. Like a thermal shock or something like that. I'm not sure. Now, the stuff that's been sitting out there all winter might have had some freeze thaw stuff going on with it, but I don't know. Will it make it easier, like Blind Dude there, where he's crushing it by hand? Yeah, definitely. And you're doing small enough samples that you can like put it in a fire in a cast iron container and then dump it into some water. That might work. But if that's not what you're going to be doing at full production scale, then you don't want to do that, because that's not the ore that's going to go in the crusher at full speed. Okay. Again, when you're doing the testing, you want to make it hard, not easy. Okay. Because if you can do what you want to do with the toughest stuff, then the easiest stuff is going to be a walk in the park. Okay. If you do it the other way around, it may work. And then you throw the tough stuff in and life goes all to hell. Yeah. And as Alex has said, certain stuff you can just let it sit out in the weather for a while. Yeah, I agree, Dave. Now, if it was really important for whatever the process was, then you could spend a lot more money on something like a rotary kiln and do it that way. But it would have to be justified. I say it's one of those things that if you had something that was extraordinarily difficult but extraordinarily valuable, might make sense. Absolutely. Just like roasting sulfides doesn't make sense if your sulfide concentrate is running 1/10 of an ounce to the ton. If it's running 100 ounces to the ton, it makes much greater sense. Okay. So that's it. Outlier. Final mesh size prior to leaching. Determined here and here. In the laboratory, you do bottle roll testing. Let's see here. Here's one of my bottles for bottle roll testing. I've got 2 pieces of 1/2-inch conduit with a couple pulleys on one end, a couple of pillow block bearings, and air conditioner swamp cooler motor to drive it. And it's just like a rock tumbler. You set it there. Now this right here, see, I was doing bottle roll testing of resin to see the recovery of the resin. This was pregnant solution. So I could, do the testing with the resin using the same procedure I've done in the past so I can get good comparisons. But what you would do is you would put rock, leach solution in here, roll it. In the case of a gravity separation, crush it, screen it to different sizes, pan the different sizes, and check your tailings, that sort of thing. That'll give you a good idea right quick. Then you want to get your head ore, crush it all to such and such passing whatever mesh, and then do a head, cons, and a tails test and see what you get. And how much difference in screening size depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get mineral liberation, like for gravity separation, I don't know, let me do a demonstration. That's a different color. Let's get something that's a better color for this. There we go. That'll work. Here's your gold particle, your simulated gold particle on your simulated rock particle. And let's say this rock particle here is, 10 mesh. Okay. And then this this gold particle will be like 100 mesh, 60, 100 mesh. Now, in order to crush this to where this is separated from that, you're likely going to have to crush this down to somewhere like at least 50 mesh to get that completely broken away. Okay. And if it isn't broken away, then you're trying to concentrate a heavy particle stuck to a lighter particle. That doesn't work too well. It also gives you a dirty con. Okay. So with a normal set of sieves, you would, for leaching, I have exceptionally good ore for leaching because it's really, really fine gold. And I've determined that 20 mesh works good for me. Okay. The mineral liberation test, that's going to take, you're probably going to be between 50 and 200 mesh. Okay. To get real good liberation. The only way to find out is you actually have to test it. Okay. So you go like 20, 50, 70, 100 mesh, something like that. And then when you get your, your panned concentrates, microscopically examine the cons and see, do you have free gold particles or do you have gold particles stuck to rock particles? Do you have something like this or do you have stuff like this? Difference. So you do this by testing. There is no number. There's no magic numbers. They're not saying this will work and that won't work. All ores work different. And as a general rule, you need to just test it. But if you're going for mineral liberation, you probably got to go at least 40 mesh or minus. Okay, that would be unusual. That's cool. Not sure. So just sieve it, pan it, look at it, do assays, things like this to figure out what the heck is going on. At what point can you make that gravity separation work? At what point do your concentrates, when you look at them, is all the gold in separate particles, and not stuck to other rocks and things like that? What other heavy rocks do you have in there? Do you have sulfides? Do you have iron oxides, magnetite, hematite? These kinds of things. This is what you find out cheap and easy right here. I've got an advantage of a lot of people. I've got an RC46. I can turn rock to sand at the rate of about 500 pounds per hour. Coarse sand, but sand nevertheless. Then I can screen it if I need to or whatever. And then I have different particle sizes and I can go from there. If I have a big sample I want to do and I want it finely ground, I can run it through the Stutenroth. The problem with the Stutenroth for testing like that is that it's got a huge amount of rough area in it. And to clean it out properly between samples will be extraordinary amount of work. With the RC46, I got rolls. They're real easy to clean after the test. Okay. So you get minimal cross contamination. These little chain mills, about this big or whatever, those work okay because you can pull the end plate and blow it out real well if you need to. Okay. But that's the sort of thing where you got to test. Really freaking annoying because you're never making money on tests. These kind of tests, you're not processing enough stuff. You want to get down into production here. That's right, man. Get some production. But if you haven't done this right, this isn't going to work out right unless you're extraordinarily lucky. Okay. So don't trust luck. If you're that lucky, go to the casino. Okay. If you're consistently that lucky, just go to the casino, man. It's a lot less work. So this, I say, is where most people make the most common mistake, aside from just going out there and buying a gold mine for somebody because he says, yeah, it's a gold mine, and not doing your proper sampling and due diligence in the purchase area. The next biggest thing is buying equipment first, because until you know what grind sizes, what material you've got, say, will it grind okay dry, or are you going to need to go wet flushing? All of these things, you don't know what the hell equipment you need. Now, the nice thing is the equipment you buy to do this stuff can be used to do it again and again and again, whether it be just for process control testing or for the next project. All mines run out of ore sooner or later. If you're a successful mining operation, you're probably going to be looking for another mine to add into your stable of mines. something like that. And so this equipment doesn't go to waste. You either use it for process control in your laboratory or you use it for the next project. For example, we haven't used the RC46 for anything except a jaw crusher in a year, basically. Well, except for crushing that slag for you that one time. But this summer is, we'll be up on top of the mountain there, and it's going to be working every day, crushing the samples as we get them so we can do an immediate hand pan on it to get an idea of what we've got. David Villa, very good point. Equipment for hire also. Um, it's less easy to get stuff like crushers, but things like electric demolition hammers, generators, stuff like that, yeah, you can hire that out. And so um, I already did, Jim, but I'll do it again. Okay. In hard rock ores, you're going to get some heavy metals: lead, arsenic, antimony, mercury, things like that. By doing a multi element analysis, you find out what else you've got because that can kill you. Okay. Um, it's less than $100 to do a multi element analysis, but you really do want to know what else you've got in there because not only for your health reasons, but also for environmental disposal reasons. I mean, you mining rock and turning it into a highly hazardous waste that the EPA is going to get very, very annoyed and want you to spend a lot of money to clean up. Yeah, he finally showed up. I don't know. He just doesn't like me or something. He never shows up here anymore. But anyhow, I say these are the sort of things that are annoying as hell if you're on a tight budget. I say if you got plenty of money, well, who cares? Fine. The more information I have, the happier I am. But it's one of those things that yeah, don't try and skimp on this unless you know exactly where you can get away with it. Yeah, Alex, they can be a real problem. You can also use them for backfill in some cases, though. If you've already got a hole in the ground, there's times you can use the tailings as backfill, and that can be helpful too. So I say it's six of one, half dozen of the other. There's all kinds of different things you can do with it. We got a large area in Montana B that, yeah, we could backfill a lot and stabilize the ground, you know, but we don't, at the present time, we don't have a need to throw away that much stuff. If we did, yeah, we got a place for it for a while. That's exactly what I'm talking about today, Jim. The particular people I was discussing things with yesterday, I'm sure they spent at least $100,000 on equipment. Okay, and so if that equipment isn't the right equipment for what they need, for example, they have a large jaw crusher. Now, it's clearly obviously used. They might have got it very cheap. They might have bought that thing for basically scrap iron price. In which case, okay, so you got a whole bunch of extra capacity. Whoop-de-doo. But if it wasn't really, really cheap, that's a big ass crusher to feed the small Stutenroth mill. It's oversized by 10 or 20 to 1. Okay. It's I think it was an 8x16 jaw. And my 4x6 jaw can keep up with the Stutenroth, you know. That sounds about right, Chris. Exactly. According to Chris, they spent a whole bunch of money on a mill that wouldn't work because they didn't do this stuff. It it's not hard to do. It's just annoying. Okay. Be disciplined. Okay. This is a high risk business. Be disciplined. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of money and not get ahead. Okay. So say that's real important. Um, it's not real exciting a lot of times to watch us in the lab, but when we make mistakes, we make mistakes 10 grams of resin at a time. Uh, what would that be? With highly loaded resin, 10 grams of dried resin is maybe a half a gram, $30. Okay. That, that's a lot better mistake to make than when it's 300 grams of resin at a whack and you do something really unfortunate. Yeah, Gold. There's some places that it must be pretty well. Look at Confederate Gulch, ounces to the pan. Yay! Was this a new mine over there, Chris? I presume from your description there. Yeah, and it doesn't matter how rich the ore is. There's always a process that won't do crap. Okay. You can always screw it up horribly. Okay. So, lab scale first, pilot scale next. Okay. Pilot scale is also micro scale in general. Say something like the RC46. I could use it and recirculate through the rolls crushers and get a product I could feed in to the agitation tank. When I first started, not last year, but the year before, we were using a cement mixer. I could only do, it was 100 pounds at a whack, but we already had it. There's an agitation tank for you. We did that. It's working. Hey, honey bunny, how's it going? Yeah, it was pretty precise, just the wrong time zone. I think I think it would be worth your while to rewatch the first hour uh, when you have a chance, honey. This was a pretty good start. Yeah, the nice thing about the RC46, Chris, is that it is so versatile and portable and such. You can do a lot with it. I agree. It's kind of small for pilot scale, but like that's what I was using with the rolls working to pre-crush for my impact mill, and then it made it real easy for that. So so I say this is really important. I'm going to say looking at these guys' situation, they have spent a lot of money. They have some good quality stuff, and they seem to be nice guys, but they spent quite a lot of time and are just getting to the point where they're seeing how things work. And for example, they don't know what the optimum grind size is. They've already got a mill and they don't know what the optimum grind size is. Cart before the horse, you know? So, say this is the sort of thing where you just, do this stuff small scale. Eva's done a fantastic job with the pyrometallurgy to where we should be able to scale up pretty easily and pretty reliably. That sort of thing. So it's again, this is real cheap, real cheap. We had to kind of combine this because we needed the quantity of loaded resin from a pilot scale, small pilot scale, to do the laboratory testing on the resin. And so, say we've kind of, you know, leapfrogged. And that's another thing you're going to wind up doing if you don't have a huge budget, is you're going to do something and then it works okay. So you make a scale up over here, and now you've got a bottleneck somewhere else. And then you're going to deal with that bottleneck, but now your scale up is the bottleneck. And you're constantly kind of working at one little piece at a time and getting it to your final product. And, okay. But using that process, your risks are very low to be throwing away a lot of money and getting nothing back for it. So anyhow, that's the important thing, you know. You got to do that annoying testing first before you start heading for production. And yes, production is where you want to go, and it's just pulling you. You know, it has, and you just got to be disciplined. You just got to be disciplined. That's all there is to it. Well, and that's the thing, Chris. Pilot mill for what? You know, again, you're going to have a lot of options available to you. I do like the basic concept of my impact mill because it's reasonably efficient. The nice thing is it's self-classifying too. And the dust issue is fairly easy to control, you know? So the concept is good. It's, you know, it would need to get a lot heavier to scale up, but there's no reason it couldn't be a lot heavier and beefier. If I had one the size of the Stutenroth and the robustness of that Stutenroth, it would probably cost about as much as the Stutenroth. It would, in terms of maintenance, probably be about the same as the Stutenroth, but probably a little bit more. Okay, in terms of time and money spent maintaining it, but it would be easier to maintain, and you wouldn't have the uh, classification screen. You wouldn't have to have the recirculation of the classified material. All that's all done now, and so that simplifies the system. So overall, I think it would be simpler. Um, so I like that design. I'm pretty happy with it. It has some weaknesses, which you find out, you know, how do things break once you actually use it? And they say, okay, that needs to be bigger. In my case, it was the shaft, and how you weld the shaft to the rotor. That was also an issue that, you know, it made itself felt after time. Yeah, I know, Chris, but you know just how generalized that would be. You're looking almost a 40-foot trailer there because you're going to have gravity, flotation, leaching, bottle rolls, uh, you know, different grinding setups. You know, you're definitely going to have a jaw crusher. And that's one thing for the primary size reduction. The jaw crusher, as far as I'm concerned, has yet to be beat in the relatively small package. Okay, you get giant packages. You know, if you need to dump 100 tons into it at a whack, gyratory crusher, assuming it's going to be sitting there for a long time. But for the kind of scale we do, jaw crusher, you got that one figured out. That's pretty easy.
I'm a Zen miner. I want one of everything.
You know, to some extent, yes, outlier, but because it only takes, well, the size crusher I'm using, which is about 200 pounds an hour throughput, but it's 200 pounds an hour, properly crushed and delivered to the agitation tank. That less than 5 minutes start to finish to have the front cover off and hose out the chamber, put the front cover back on again. No big deal. Besides, as long as it's just sitting there, it's not going anywhere. It's like, okay, I don't care. In a case like that, what you're really worried about is you don't want to wear through the hard facing at the edges of your wear parts, because then you start wearing, the parts themselves. So you need to be able to monitor the amount of wear you're getting, and that would be the normal reason that I would pull apart the housing, would be to look at the wear. But when you do, just take a hose, little plastic tub, hose it out, voila, put it back together again. Yeah, for the secondary crush, I really like the Rolls crushers because they do a pretty good job if you got small enough stuff to start with, like 1/2 inch minus. And then they'll crush it down to a coarse sand pretty reliably, low wear rates, and high energy efficiency. So for secondary crush, I do like the Rolls crushers. So I think the Keen is a great machine. Yeah, it's not armor plate; it's abrasion resistant plate. Exactly. People think it's armor. It's not. It's abrasion resistant. Yep. And boy, we do abrade stuff. Absolutely. I'm wondering, with the extraordinary increases in the price of steel, what the ratio between AR plate to T1 to mild steel is now compared to what it used to be a couple of years ago. Honey Bunny, do you have any idea what the ratio is of mild steel to T1 to AR 500 nowadays? Just say 1/4 inch plate, full sheet. What's the percentage difference in price? Because I know a few years ago it was about, I think it was 80% more for T1. Might have been 50%, but basically it was like 200, as I recall, for mild and 300 for T1. And then, AR was, of course, significantly more than that. Yeah, I would also suggest, Chris, if designing a roll mill, to start from the get-go thinking about replaceable shells on those things. Yeah, who knows what the price is now, Honey Bunny? Because I don't know. That's a good price. Anyone happen to know mild steel versus T1 versus AR? just curious, because that's important in terms of downtime and wear parts. Because if you're using a computer controlled plasma cutter, which we did for that last one we built, it's just as easy to cut AR 500 as it is to cut mild steel. No big deal. Now, it may be different when you weld it together. You may have more troubles when you weld it or not. I don't know. But yeah, these things are important. But I do say I do like the basic concept of mine, because you get good fine grind. You focus the wear on places where you can replace the metal with hard facing. you get classification, and you get transportation all out of one moving part, you know? That should be interesting, blind dude. Yeah, in the case of say my device, the the real plates that take the pounding, um, they they're not welded together. They do have a bead of hard facing on them at the edge, but they're not structurally welded together. They're just bolted in place. There you go, Dave. Works for me. Yep. So I say that's the sort of things you got to look at each time. But okay, honey. No harder to weld the mild steel, just doesn't like to be rolled or bent. Do you tend to get more fatigue cracking at welds with the AR as opposed to the mild steel? I would imagine, honey bunny. Yeah, AR is not easy to bend. Say, um, but I don't have the tools to bend quarter-inch plate, even small pieces, anyhow. So I designed it all so that it's all welded together. There you go, blind dude. It's been too long since I've had to. Anyhow, next thing there'll be a testicle joke. Oh, but anyhow, uh, okay, I'm sure Lauren knows what that means. Okay, looking for price. Okay, let me try this one here. John gave me a thing. Best steel screen. What about her? Becomes more brittle, yes. Exactly. Let's see. Heat treated, commonly used for screens. That's why we used T1 for that last impact mill we made. Yeah, doesn't tell us prices though. That's what I was wondering, John, is what the price is on that stuff nowadays. Okay, there we go. Now he's got prices there. Let's see. T1 $7.70 a pound. Man, let's see. Select size. 4x8. $1,000 for a sheet of T1 now, little one.
Oh my God.
My goodness gracious.
Oh my God. $1,000.
$1,000.
Oh.
Yep.
That's just insane. That's insane and ridiculous.
Let's see. So that's the T1. Let's see if I can find hot roll steel. Hello. Flat bar. Where's the sheet? Steel plate. A36. Steel sheet. I think it would be plate. So I'm looking.
Good grief.
On the other hand, A36, and I'm not sure what A36 is. That would be $500 a sheet. I presume that's a mild steel, but I do not know. Wow.
That is.
Yeah, the prices are pretty crazy.
Bizarre and unaccountable. I am not a happy camper now.
Let's see what we got here. Let's see. Air hardening. Anyhow, so yeah, again, for 200 pounds an hour, I'm pretty happy with my machine. If you need more than 200 pounds an hour, you'd have to seriously upscale it. I've got an 8-inch wide rotor, and the Stutenroth, I think, has a about an 11-inch wide rotor, I think, if I'm not sure. And so I'm not sure exactly how it would scale. I know that it's also possible by putting in more wear bars inside the liner, then you may have more impact points, which would give you, hi Davey, which would give you theoretically more grinding. So anyhow, yeah, this is one of those deals where you just have to check everything. Another important point: never trust the nameplate throughput of any device without testing.
Didn't we have a table, a gravity separation table, that claimed to be like massively
I'm not sure what.
hundreds of pounds an hour, and it was.
Oh, yeah, we had that RP4, and the one you're thinking of is the M4 from Action Mining, where they said it was, like 1,000 pounds an hour or something like that. It was more like 100 pounds an hour. Yep.
But it's a very good piece of equipment. It just,
Yeah, extremely low throughput. It could get you separation, but just ridiculously slow.
It might have been our ore too, but
yeah, well, same thing. And that's another thing is, for some strange reason, the people who sell equipment don't tell you aggressively when it won't work, and so say don't trust a manufacturer that it's either going to work or it's going to work at the rate they say it'll work or with the efficiency they say it'll work or whatever. Just don't believe that stuff. Okay, you just got to try it out. Well, that's a little bit much for my plan, honey bunny, but okay. Interesting. Just how to surface harden and heat treat stuff. Double case hardening, yeah. Yeah, most of these people make their money selling equipment. They don't make their money making you money. They make their money taking your money. So they're not out there trying to make sure that their equipment is exactly right for your application. They're not there double checking to make sure that the throughput is what you're going to get in your application. If you're talking to a salesperson and they're using a lot of qualifiers like maybe around or possibly or this, that, that's better than somebody saying, oh yeah, that's going to do this. Okay. Because how can he tell what it's going to do?
Well, look at what the Eco Goldex people told you about how it works on you.
you know. And so I say, yeah, just check it out. And say, when you're looking at a big piece of equipment like a separation table, a grinder, a crusher, something like that, the manufacturer, let's say like Jason over there at Mount Baker, he's got a whole setup set up. I'm sure he'd be happy to custom mill some more for you just to, see how it works. And then you can find out, what your efficiencies are, what your grind sizes
Oh
are,
yeah, he's really great.
all that kind of stuff, you know. And I say a good reputable manufacturer will do the same thing. You know, they will if they've got equipment set up, then they will, be happy to run some of your ore for a price.
The folks at Mount Baker are really good.
Yeah, I say, and there's good people, but I say the thing that you got to look for is the one that say this is how it'll work. Also, look. One thing that was interesting about the Action Mining M4 table was we asked, got any videos or whatever? Then they say, yeah, it'll do 1,000 pounds an hour. And then you look at the video and the guy's feeding it with a tablespoon. Now, I don't know about you, but I have a tough time feeding 1,000 pounds an hour like this with a tablespoon, you know? I mean, so you can just look at it and go, no, that's not cutting it. When I talked to Keen about the RC46, he hemmed and hawed a bit, which is fine because he's like, under ideal conditions, it's probably about 1,500 pounds an hour, but it's going to be less than that with some of the harder it is and stuff like that. And say that's, he's being honest, and the new RC46, I think, has 2 sets of rolls. And yeah, that would be like way cool. But I think they're, I don't know, $10,000-$11,000. Let's see here. Just for Keen Engineering catalog. Let's see. Let me see what their current price is for an RC46. Get the price list. Okay. Part number, dry washer. Page 1 of 7. Okay. There's A's, G's, H. RC46 double rolls, electric stand, $16,950.
Oh my Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. The rollers.
Dude, that's almost what you make in a year from Social Security.
Yeah, I know. The rollers, they haven't gone up that much. They're only $600 each now. Okay. They were $500. Now they're $599. The wear plates have gone up significantly. Stand-mounted rock crusher with the Honda engine. That's the RC46 with standard single rollers. That's now $12,950, little one. Yeah. Yeah.
Holy guacamole.
Yeah, pretty much.
Holy cannoli.
Now, I will say that the gentlemen at Keen, they've been professional, and helped me with, I needed parts or this or that or the other. So I say I like them, and but it ain't cheap. Um, well, honey bunny, ask Jim how big a trommel do you need for that? Oh, and by the way, um, do you have a lot of clay in your soils? Because if not, you may be better off with a shaker deck instead of a trommel. Uh, oh, let's see. Thank you, David. There's a bottle of what, where, who? There's a bottle of booze in the thumbnail? Yes, there is. Um, that booze was actually, it's Everclear. And the reason it's there is because I was cleaning out some stuff for somebody and it was just sitting there. It was going to be thrown away. And I thought, well, we can use alcohol. you know, that's why it's in the lab. It's it's just grain alcohol. Yep.
You never know when you're going to need some booze.
Why not? Let's see. Uh, man, why is this thing having trouble? Tooling action, inner strakes are just big. What a shaker table for the fines. I think the surging would complicate separation. Well, Jim's definitely knows better than me. Um, yeah, John, when I bought my RC46, which would be in about 2011, it was, what was it, 8,500, a little less than 9,000, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, and it was the trailer mounted, so it was a little extra. But so yeah, back in 2011, it was about a little less than 9,000, and yeah, I think it's a great basic design. It's it's pretty good in many ways. I would uh, if I was going to redesign something like that, the first thing I would do is put shells on those rollers. Okay, so that when you wear out those rollers, you can just pull them out and uh, probably just split and drive off the old shell, and then press a new shell on there and get back in business because it's $600 a roller. That gets pretty pricey. Mine are pretty well worn out right now, and I don't know how much longer uh, I'll be able to run it. I don't know when I'm going to run out of uh, adjustment. I've got about a 1/4 inch lip still on the rollers, you know. But I say we got to get that thing off of the ranch for a bit so we can work on it. And right now, that road to the ranch was a mess last time I was out there. And I say there's all kinds of ways of doing it, especially if you did it from the get go, Chris. But yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to get a pretty tough steel tube that I say with the right thing to put it on, that shouldn't be too hard a deal. uh, Keith says that they're paying $16 to $30 an hour to write articles. Eva, Where is that, Keith? Oh, I know she prefers being out in the field, but wintertime gets kind of boring. So who knows? But
Yeah, where are they paying these days?
yeah, I don't know. Um, but that's my critique of the RC46 is the rollers, um, the wear plates themselves in a hard quartz ore wear out real fast, like an 8-hour shift, and you're having to replace them. That's $200 with wear plates. With proper hard facing, they tend to crack because it's an alloy steel. On the other hand, with a mild steel backing and then hard facing, they should last pretty well, you know? So that's the other thing I would do. But Keen, I presume they're just having, I mean, I'm sure they don't make those plates themselves. I know they don't heat treat them. We told them they send them out for heat treating. But, even if they make them themselves now, it's pretty simple to do with a plasma cutter, and selling them for over $100 a pop. So, and again, that's not unreasonable, but I can't afford to spend $200 every 8 hours, you know. So that's why we hard face them, and it's I say that alloy tends to crack when you hard face it when you mess up the heat treating. With the way they come from the factory, not a problem. But when you start playing with them like I do, then cracking becomes an issue. Also, when you're hard facing them, you really need to clamp them. Uh, if you're hard facing this surface, they're going to tend to warp this way. And I found that if you put like a piece of 1/8 inch strap behind it and then clamp it to something, rigid and hard, so you got just a little bit of a flex in it, then after you hard face and let it cool, when you let go, it springs back up to flat. There's Eva. So anyhow, it looks like it's time for the tinfoil hat report.
Hi, everybody. Hi, honey bunny. Well, I hope everyone is having a wonderful, slow, dystopian economic collapse because things are looking really cool these days. Sort of. Maybe. At any rate. Hi, Shaggy. Hi, Kodak. Plenty of things have been going on. I'm sure this has escaped no one's attention. Well, except the mainstream media. Everything escapes their attention. Just, because we had an amazing little ramble, across 6 counties the other day. It was really cool.
One day.
It was just awesome scenery, awesome animals all over the place, a very disturbing lack of commercial vehicle travel on every road we were on, and a whole bunch of mostly empty truck stops, which was a little bit bizarre and unaccountable, but I guess these things just happen. Mm, yeah. So let's see if we can find anything in the news. Well, other than that whole thing about Bud Light, that's in everybody's news for some bizarre and unaccountable reason.
I identify as a successful gold miner.
Gold price retreats below 2,000 on strong U.S. jobs growth. we're just going to kind of draw the curtain of charity when it comes to talking about that U.S. jobs growth, but I highly advise anybody that wants to see the whole picture to toddle on over to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics website while the information is still there. Because the goddess has noticed it's getting a lot harder to find stuff on that website lately. I mean, it's impossible to find a whole lot of stuff on Fred these days, and it's pretty darn difficult to find stuff on the Treasury.gov website. And, well, that contagion, that pandemic of 404 on the interwebs seems to be spreading to other government websites. Just something I noticed recently. Gold prices retreated on Monday as the dollar advanced on Friday's strong U.S. jobs numbers, while traders also positioned for inflation readings this week, which could influence the Fed's interest rate decision. Spot gold fell 1% to $1,988.25 an ounce by 1 p.m. Eastern, back below the key $2,000 level, while U.S. gold futures were down 1.1% to $2,004.50 per ounce in New York. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury yields rose following last week's job report that showed a still strong pace of hiring in March, likely giving room for the Federal Reserve to hike rates again. Lower yields previously gave metals a reprieve to move higher, but with further rises in energy prices led by oil possible, rate hikes are still on the table, and that can push gold back even further. Daniel Pavlonis, senior market strategist at RJO Futures, told Reuters. Chances of a 25 basis point rate hike next month were now pegged at 70%, driving an uptick in the dollar, making dollar-denominated bullion less attractive for holders of other currencies. Another rate hike could really box the market in, with gold likely consolidating in a range, Pavlonis added. Gold surpassed $2,000 last week as weak U.S. services job sector and job openings data made a rate hike next month less likely. The CPI print is due at 8:30 in the morning Eastern Time on Wednesday and will be followed later in the day by minutes from the Fed's last meeting. Oh, joy. Oh, rapture. Oh, bullshit. Signs that U.S. disinflation is gathering pace. Disinflation.
Is this a new word?
Yeah, I was going to say, is this a new word?
That's like negative growth.
Yeah. Allowing the Fed to pause rate hikes sooner rather than later may restore gold to recent highs. Said Han Tan, chief market analyst at Exinity. Okay. Disinflation. Interesting. The goddess has her doubts about this, having taken a look at the prevailing prices of many, many things in the world as of late. However, who am I to say anything? Perhaps my tinfoil hat is a little bit too tight. Just saying. Indonesia to propose limited free trade deal with the U.S. on critical minerals. How nice of them. Indonesia will propose a free trade agreement for some minerals shipped to the United States so that companies in the electric vehicle battery supply chain operating in the country can benefit from U.S. tax credits, a senior minister said on Monday. Washington has issued a new guidance for EV tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act. Remember that thing? Requiring a certain value of battery components to be produced or assembled in North America or a free trade partner. The rules are aimed at weaning the United States off dependence on China for the development of its EV battery supply chain. Indonesia does not have a free trade agreement with the United States, but its nickel products have increasingly become important in the supply chain. Well, gee, I wonder why. The Southeast Asian country has been trying to leverage its nickel reserves, the world's largest, to attract investment from battery and EV makers, including U.S. companies such as Tesla and Ford. As tell the new IRA guidelines, Indonesian Minister Luhut Panjaitan, who has been spearheading efforts to attract U.S. companies, told the news conference Jakarta will propose a limited free trade agreement with Washington. We do not have an FTA with them. Now we're proposing a limited FTA with them, Luhut said, adding he would meet with Ford and Tesla executives to discuss the matter when he travels to the United States later this week. Luhut's deputy, Septian Haryoseto, said the FTA proposal, which was still at an early stage, will likely be similar to the one the United States has signed with Japan for the critical mineral trade. The United States and Japan in March agreed on a swiftly negotiated trade deal on EV battery minerals, including lithium, nickel, cobalt, graphite, and manganese. It is the same in essence that for critical minerals there will be free trade with requirements on processing, such as for nickel, aluminum, cobalt, and copper, he said. Since Indonesia banned exports of nickel ore in 2020, many Chinese companies invested in refining facilities, including high-pressure acid leach plants that produce mixed hydroxide precipitate, a material extracted from nickel ore used in EV batteries. Last month, Ford signed an agreement with an Indonesian unit of Brazilian nickel miner Vale and China's Zhejiang Huayu Cobalt to partner in a $4.5 billion HPAL plant in Indonesia's Sulawesi Island. Luhut led an Indonesian delegate last week on a trip to China to promote investment opportunities. Really now. Seto said officials will hold talks with Chinese EV company BYD Group in May on potential investment. BYD. Didn't we recently see something about a company called BYD and a bunch of exploding cars in China? Or was that a different acronym?
I don't remember.
He declined to comment on the progress of talks with Tesla, citing a non-disclosure agreement. He better watch out. Those non-disclosure agreements apparently have become illegal at some point, under certain circumstances, or something. At least, if you believe a certain district attorney in New York. Just saying, I am sure these people will guard their backs because it is becoming fairly obvious to the world that sketchy shit goes on in D.C. Just saying, this is not unknown here. Is central bank digital currency unconstitutional? This should be an interesting read. The latest fad in monetary policy circles worldwide is CBDC, or central bank digital currency, a government-created cryptocurrency exchanged on a blockchain. Many fear it would give governments complete control over individuals by allowing them to track and even block individual transactions and impose taxes at will. Well, yeah. In the United States, though, money has a constitutional basis so firm that despite its name, a U.S. government CBDC would not be money or even currency. It could exist as one payment system among many, but without violating the U.S. Constitution, it could not be forced on Americans as the sole final means of payment. This always assumes that the United States government pays attention to the Constitution. Just saying. Article 1, Section 8 gives Congress the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States and to coin money, regulate the value thereof, and a foreign coin. Now note, it also gives Congress the power to provide for the punishment of counterfeiting the securities and current coin of the United States, and to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years. For anybody who ever wondered why we have an NDAA every 2 years, there's your answer. Article 1, Section 9 stipulates no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by laws. Really? No money shall be drawn from the treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by laws. That seems to be a little bit ignored at times these days. Just saying. A regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. Good luck with that one. Article 1, Section 10 says no state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. The reasons for those policies are well understood and uncontroversial. Well, they used to be uncontroversial. Americans wanted their new nation to be a common currency area, so only the national government could have any monetary policy discretion. The stickier question was always the extent of that discretion, particularly the federal government's ability to issue bills of credit. I believe after much study, the founders and framers would have tolerated temporary periods of fiat money issuance during wartime or other major emergencies, but they would not consider a permanent fiat system constitutional. No, they certainly wouldn't. That position is obviously not the prevailing one, but it is also not necessary to establish the fact that CBDC is not an electronic form of fiat money or any other type of currency under the Constitution. As shown above, all three types of money specified in the Constitution, bills of credit, foreign gold and silver coins, and domestic gold and silver coins, were and remain physical bearer instruments. In other words, they are current in the sense used in Section 8 above, meaning that mere possession provides sufficient proof of their ownership. To tender current money is to turn over physical possession to another party in order to consummate a trade or pay a debt. Due to its physical nature and bearer legal status, money as used in the Constitution can be used anonymously as a means of final payment. In America's constitutional context, the CBDC is a payment system, a means of exchanging money over a physical distance. The framers were aware of the payment systems provided by 18th century banks and merchants, but wisely made them no part of the Constitution. They did not conflate checks, bills of exchange, or other orders for the payment of money with money itself, and never made deposits or even banknotes a legal tender. Can the Treasury or Federal Reserve proclaim that a CBDC is a new payment system that people may use instead of existing payment services? Yep. Though it's not clear a government CBDC will lower transaction costs enough to induce many to switch voluntarily. Can the government say a CBDC is now money and confiscate Federal Reserve notes and bank deposits like it confiscated gold during the New Deal? No, not lawfully. When has that stopped them before? But just saying, that is a nice reassuring note there. We all know CBDC is not constitutional, and our current Federal Reserve notes are also not constitutional. But that's an entirely other story because all the amendments that happened during 1913 need to go away, okay? This notion of making things randomly constitutional is a very bad idea. Just saying. 3 congressmen introduced a gold standard bill to stabilize the dollar's value. While the goddess applauds this idea, very most definitely, ain't gonna go nowhere. Let's see what's going on with this. As America faces the twin threats of inflation and bank failures, 3 U.S. congressmen introduced a pivotal sound money bill that would enable the Federal Reserve note dollar to regain stable footing for the first time in more than half a century. Representative Alex Mooney, Republican, West Virginia, good for West Virginians, joined by Representatives Andy Biggs and Paul Gosar, Republicans from Arizona. This is the only time recently Arizona has not sucked rocks, okay? Introduced H.R. 2435, the Gold Standard Restoration Act, to facilitate the repegging of the volatile Federal Reserve note to a fixed weight of gold bullion. It should be noted that in the Constitution, a dollar is defined by a certain number of grains of metal, silver. Okay, so yeah, the word dollar has a real definition. What we have now does not, but that's another story. Upon passage of H.R. 2435, the U.S. Treasury and Federal Reserve are given 24 months to publicly disclose all gold holdings and gold transactions. Good luck with that. After which time the Federal Reserve note dollar would be formally repegged to a fixed weight of gold at its then market price. Good luck with that. Federal Reserve notes would become fully redeemable for and exchangeable with gold at the new price, with the U.S. Treasury and its gold reserves backstopping Federal Reserve banks as a guarantor. Monetary experts have noted a return to a gold standard would substantially curtail the economic damage caused by inflation, runaway federal debt, and monetary system instability, which it would. A gold standard would protect against Washington's irresponsible spending habits and the creation of money out of thin air, said Representative Mooney in a statement. Prices would be shaped by economics rather than the instincts of bureaucrats. No longer would American families, businesses, and the economy as a whole be at the mercy of the Federal Reserve and reckless Washington spenders. The Gold Standard Restoration Act also makes several findings as to the harm the Federal Reserve System has inflicted on everyday Americans, particularly since President Richard Nixon temporarily suspended gold backing of America's monetary system in 1971. Oh, that was a nanosecond ago in geologic time. Come on now. Not even a nanosecond yet. H.R. 2435 points out the Federal Reserve note has lost more than 40% of its purchasing power since 2000 and 97% of its purchasing power since the passage of the Federal Reserve Act in 1913, which has to go, of course. Historians have observed the elimination of gold redeemability from a monetary system freed central bankers and federal government officials from accountability when they expand the money supply, fund government deficits through trillion-dollar bond purchases, or otherwise manipulate the economy. At times, including 2021 and 2022, Federal Reserve actions helped create inflation rates of 8% or higher, increasing the cost of living for many Americans to untenable levels, enriching the owners of financial assets while endangering the jobs, wages, and savings of blue-collar workers. Notably, Representative Mooney's bill would also require a full disclosure of all central bank and U.S. government gold holdings and gold-related financial transactions over the last 6 decades, a seemingly taboo subject surrounded by mystery and deception. This sounds like audit the Fed time. Woohoo! To enable the market and market participants to arrive at the fixed Federal Reserve note dollar gold parity in an orderly fashion, the Secretary and the Federal Reserve shall each make publicly available all holdings of gold, with a report of any purchases, sales, swaps, leases, and any other financial transactions involving gold, since the temporary suspension on August 15, 1971, of gold redeemability obligations under the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944. In the years leading up to Nixon's panicked temporary suspension of gold redeemability, abusive U.S. deficit spending and currency debasement had prompted many foreign central banks to turn in their Federal Reserve notes for gold. However, this disgorgement of America's gold holdings was largely conducted in secret. That's why H.R. 2435 also requires the Fed and Treasury to disclose all records pertaining to redemptions and transfers of United States gold in the 10 years preceding the temporary suspension in August 15, 1971, of gold redeemability obligations. U.S. sound money groups and industry leaders are cheering Mooney's actions. Oh, hell yeah. Government cannot continue to spend and print on a massive scale without producing existential threats to the currency and our economy, said Lawrence W. Weed, President Emeritus of the Foundation for Economic Education. FEE, great people. The gold standard never failed America's. Bad ideas and bad politicians did. If we do nothing, disaster awaits us just as it drowned earlier civilizations that spent and inflated their way to ruin, Reed continued. Today's debt-based fiat money system serves primarily to support big government and wealthy financial insiders, while the Federal Reserve's serial policy of currency debasement punishes savers and wage earners, explained Stefan Gleason, president of the Sound Money Defense League and Money Metals Exchange. A return to gold redeemability would arrest the problem of inflation, restrain the growth of wasteful and inefficient government, and kick off an exciting new era of American prosperity. The full text of Representative Woody's gold standard bill is online. It was introduced March 30th, 2023, and referred to the House Committee on Financial Services. The goddess strongly suggests that this might be a good time to send an email and a physical paper letter with a stamp on it to your Congress critter and point out to your Congress critter that this is a very desirable thing to get behind. It won't work with Democrats. But if enough rhinos get the word, they might actually decide to do something for once. One has to wonder, of course, being they're rhinos, and we all know what rhinos are like. However, this would be a good time to inform your representative that they might want to get off their happy little butt and do something for once. In other random news in the world, gold closed at, let's see here, $1,991 an ounce. Silver closed at $24.86 an ounce, platinum at $9.92, and palladium at $13.53, and rhodium at $6,900. Wow, rhodium's kind of in the toilet these days. A little bit bizarre, that is. And according to the IMF, central banks' interest rates to fall to pre-COVID levels here shortly.
Miss Goddess, could I ask a question?
I suppose.
If they were to inventory all of our gold reserves and peg it to the dollars that are actually in circulation, what would the price of gold be? Is there any idea?
Well, how much of a fraction are we looking at backing it? Because if we're looking at backing it at 100%, we'd be looking at tens of thousands of dollars an ounce or more. If we're looking at backing it at 2%, well then, about $3,000, $4,000 maybe, somewhere. It's big math, okay?
Is that using the official numbers that the government has for the gold in their reserves, or what people think is actually in the reserve?
That's using the official number.
So the actual number might be significantly higher value for gold.
If the goddess is pegging on the actual number, then gold is going to be unobtainium. Gold is going to make a Bitcoin look like a penny, okay?
I was thinking that might be the case.
The goddess has very, very little confidence that there is any actual unadulterated gold anywhere in any government holdings. The high interest rates most economies are seeing right now are not here to stay, said the International Monetary Fund, adding, once inflation is controlled, rates will once again approach previously ultra-low levels. Well, this sounds like an absolutely bright idea. Our analysis suggests that recent increases in real interest rates are likely to be temporary, the IMF said Monday. When inflation is brought back under control, advanced economies' central banks are likely to ease monetary policy and bring real interest rates back toward pre-pandemic levels. This means after the most aggressive synchronized monetary policy tightening in decades, interest rates will begin to drop and approach zero lower bound levels in advanced economies, while developing economies also see a steady decline. The IMF published this analysis as part of its latest World Economic Outlook. The natural level of rates, and they put the word natural in quotation, and that I agree with them now, will remain low in advanced economies or further decline in emerging markets, the IMF noted. The natural rate is a reference point for central banks that use it to gauge the stance of monetary policy. It's also important for fiscal policy. Because governments typically pay back debt over decades, the natural rate, the anchor for real rates in the long term, helps determine the cost of borrowing and the sustainability of public debts. The research alleviates some pressure around banking fears in the longer term after the banking crisis has elevated the risk of tighter credit conditions and the cost of borrowing amid higher interest rates. With monetary policy loosening again, governments and businesses can borrow more cheaply. The IMF decided to examine this topic after it was suggested that the pandemic had increased the natural interest rate, reversing the trends of globalization and ultra-low rates. Natural rates in advanced economies will likely remain low. As emerging market economies adopt more advanced technology, total factor productivity growth is expected to converge to the pace of advanced economies. Oh, really? Yeah, that's my thought as well, not sure. That is, if there's anything in there. And if it isn't adulterated, okay? We have to wonder a little bit about that one. We've all heard about that little kerfluffle with the German money and the New York Fed and the whole we need to re-pour and restamp your bars thing that happened there. Yeah, that little thing. Not much. When combined with an aging population, natural rates in emerging market economies are projected to decline toward advanced economies' rates over the long term, the IMF said. Global growth is expected to be below 3% in 2023 and remain around that level for the next 5 years, which is a weak forecast, said IMF's managing director, Kristalina Georgieva. Despite surprisingly resilient labor markets and strong consumer demand, despite the uplift in China, we expect the world economy to grow less than 3% this year, Georgieva said in a speech ahead of the World Bank and IMF spring meetings. Growth remains historically weak now and in the medium term. Georgieva also pointed out India and China would account for half of global growth in 2023, while around 90% of advanced economies see a decline in growth rates. How interesting. In a little side note, there was some odd things that have been happening this past week over there in Panda Land. You may or may not have noticed that President Macron and what was her name?
Van der Leyen. Ursula von der Leyen.
And Ursula von der Leyen decided to hie themselves off to Panda Land to have a three-cornered discussion with head panda Xi Jinping. This was done at a very odd-looking, very huge round table with everybody sitting in a nice little equilateral triangle, which was kind of weird in and of itself. At this meeting, Emmanuel Macron, France's current modern-day answer to Napoleon meets Julius Caesar, and a very, very odd individual, though. Without the competence, proceeded to lecture Xi Jinping. And Ursula proceeded to lecture Xi Jinping. And Xi Jinping was making non-committal noises and looking more and more annoyed. It turns out that he apparently politely asked Miss Ursula to please leave early, like after a day. And no, she couldn't leave the way diplomats and really important world people usually leave, the nice private exit from a private part of the airport in a nice private jet, etc. She had to hustle her happy self out through the peon and tourist part of the airport. Ooh, that must have really hurt. Serious loss of face occurs here, whether Ursula realizes it or not. It should also be noted that Xi Jinping is playing with his little boats right now. At the moment, his little boats apparently have ostensibly entirely encircled Taiwan. All of them. Lots and lots of them. And there are lots and lots of planes that are doing all kinds of low flying exercises over Taiwan, which looks a little bit sketchy. But, who am I to say that Xi Jinping is not allowed to play with his boats? Meanwhile, a little bit further east, Mad Vlad the Invader is still doing his thing. And Zelensky, the naked piano playing comedian president, is still doing his thing. And the European Union is kind of sort of still doing their thing regarding these things. And there's going to be a spring offensive. Yeah. This should go really, really well. Yeah. I don't think so. In other random United States news, a woman smoked so much crack today on the streets of San Francisco that she gave birth to a baby in the middle of the sidewalk while people filmed. Somebody did think to call 911, just, but that does say something about the current state of affairs in San Francisco that is less than complimentary. Mm-hmm. And in other news, Kamala Harris had a whole lot of fun. She went down to Tennessee and defended some legislative types that got themselves expelled from their jobs because they participated in an insurrection. Apparently, only some people can do insurrections. One of them, however, has already been reappointed to their job by some council of people they're supposedly representing. Now, I don't know how the Tennessee legislature works, but I know how the United States legislature works. And in the United States legislature, if you actually get expelled from Congress, ain't nobody can send you back. But, Tennessee is probably different. And if any of you ladies out there want to know how great your feminine protection is, look no further than Dylan Mulvaney, because Dylan Mulvaney, that amazing, brave, fantastic example of womanhood, is a spokesperson for Tampax. The goddess is not even going to wonder exactly how Dylan Mulvaney knows anything at all about tampons. The goddess doesn't want to know. But beyond all that, gold is probably going to come up above 2,000 again here relatively shortly. And this is looking like it may be a new floor. And silver is very encouragingly staying at its new floor of just a shade under 25. And meanwhile, if anybody missed it, the other day, LME and a few other exchanges that keep track of, foreign exchange and the relationship of various currencies to each other apparently had some sort of technical difficulties in all their figures as to current exchange rates, etc. Kind of sort of completely disappeared for quite a while. No clue what was up with that. But then again, the goddess has decided that there are many things that you're better off being clueless about. Meanwhile, gold and silver are on sale. Back up the truck. And I can tell you right now, we were at our LCS today. They had 10,000 ounces of silver on the freaking floor that had just come in. And guess what? None of it is going in the cases. It's all pre-orders. And they still have pre-orders outstanding. So the goddess got to hold a monster box. Yes, it wasn't mine, but I got to hold 5 ounces of silver for about 30 seconds. And boy, that is so cool. 500 ounces of silver for about 30 seconds. And it was so cool. And it was really heavy. And the big Comex bar that they had sold. So they bought another one. Who knows when it will get here. The cases were looking pretty darn empty. Gee, I wonder why. Apparently, there are Montanans and Hellenites that understand that gold and silver are on sale, so it is time to back up the truck. It's also probably time to get a little bit more unbanked because banks are getting sketchier. There are more and more reports showing up on social media that have been verified by certain parties that certain banks are closing customers' accounts randomly. Just poof, we've decided we don't want you banking with us anymore. And by the way, you'll get your check for what's in your account in 10 to 12 business days. Now, the funny thing about this is in the past, you did stand a relatively high risk of getting your bank account closed without warning. If you were the kind of person that was overdrawn a couple of times a month, and always had your bank credit card absolutely maxed out, and you had a bad you had a bad track record of sketchy dealings with your bank. The people this is happening to are not risky depositors. It is beginning to happen to the really poor folks that never have more than $50 in their account. But most of the people this is happening to is ordinary Americans that have banked at the same mid-sized to national bank. Not to name names, but Wells Fargo, Chase, and U.S. Bank are doing this really badly, and B of A is joining the party as well. These are people that have been banking with the same bank for 10, 12, 14 years. These are people that always have a balance in their account. That balance is just high enough usually that they're not paying the monthly fees because they keep their minimum balance in there. It's happening after they have started making a lot of cash withdrawals because more people have started going down to their bank after the paycheck comes in and grabbing $200 out of the ATM because they're beginning to realize that maybe it's a bad idea to leave your money in a bank. Just saying, it's possible that some people are waking up to this reality here. And then all of a sudden, they're getting told by their bank, well, we've decided we don't want to bank with you anymore, so we'll send you a check in 10 to 14 business days. Now, this is noteworthy because they are costing the bank money. At this point, the banks are being far nicer to people that can't keep a minimum balance, so they're paying the ever-increasing fees on their checking and savings accounts every month. They're being far nicer to people that are racking up 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 bounce check charges in a month at $35 a piece. They're being far nicer to people who agree to come into the bank to talk about their account and get very, very hard sales pitches to take out home equity loans, to take out car loans, to take out personal loans, or take advantage of the bank's financial planning services. So the people that are getting cut off are the responsible savers and the responsible spenders that the bank is not making enough money on. Coincidentally, if a bank gets rid of you, just so you know, it is far harder to get an account at another bank. For some bizarre and unaccountable reason, banks don't like to give bank accounts to people that have had their accounts terminated elsewhere. Go figure. even when it is terminated through no fault of their own. And that is a critical point here. I can see not wanting to give somebody an account. If they have already been terminated from 2 or 3 banks because they're a scammer and they can't keep money in the bank and they're always trying to get their fees forgiven and stuff. But if the bank chooses to terminate you for no apparent good reason, then that should not be counted against you. But it is being counted against these people. And it's beginning to happen to small businesses too, which is a very disturbing development. All of these people have a couple of things in common. Thing number one, they're not making the bank a whole hell of a lot of money. Thing number two, they're not doing what the bank wants them to do, engaging in more financial activities that will make the bank money. And point number three, and one that just dawned on me at about 4 o'clock in the morning this morning, is, well, wait a minute. If the bank did happen to fail, you know, there are fewer accounts that they'd be on the hook for in terms of FDIC, etc. And yes, we all know that the federal government now says everybody's covered, but there are no details as to exactly how that shit's going to work. So more and more it is becoming obvious that this is a really good time to get unbanked. Buy gold, it's on sale. Buy silver, it's on sale. Stock up your pantry. And remember, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Bye-bye.
Oh. Okay. Let's see who said banks knew how to count. Chris says bye, Eva.
Bye,
David
Fred.
says, tell it, woman. What's that they like?
Preach.
Preach it, girl. Preach it, girl.
Testify.
Testify. That's right.
Speaking of which, we're going to another movie this week.
Yeah, we're going to go to another small scale movie. One that was, Shaggy says, have a good one. I am a good one. But yeah, it's a small scale movie, biblical movie. First crowd-funded movie to make it to the big theaters, as far as I know. They spent about $250,000 making the movie and have already grossed over $5 million. Of course, honey bunny. Practice, practice, practice. And anyhow, let's see. Honey bunny was talking about how the Chinese military might get into some interesting situations. Yeah, so could ours, because it's their backyard. And they spent the last 10 or 15 years developing hypersonic missiles to take out warships at long ranges. But anyhow, yeah, India is kind of, I agree, kind of stand to the side here, letting things kind of shake out. But yeah. But anyhow, interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what the situation is between India and China. It's been pretty tense in the past, and yet now they're kind of working together on some stuff. So I'm not sure. Well, honey bunny, the problem with sending 10,000 mad Mongolians over the Himalayas is you take out a few roads, it's going to be a rough go. Yeah, that's my impression too. Yeah, the Indians and the Chinese, there's no love lost there. So I'm not sure what's going on. I think they're operating on the enemy, and my enemy is my friend. Oh, I think the the Indians have S300s, but I'm not sure. That's a good point. There you go, Shaggy. I wouldn't be surprised, Honey Bunny. That sounds about right to me. We in the United States, we forget that the rest of the world has long histories to think about. You know, like when was it Crimea became part of the Russian Empire in 1776 or something like that? You know, it's really they think differently over there because they think a lot longer than we do. I've seen some scenes out of that. It looks pretty good, John. Wouldn't surprise me a bit, Honey Bunny. Again, the Himalayas are not the sort of thing that it's easy to get through. It'd be pretty easy to block off the roads. Anyhow, to get back to what I started with today, just to get, let's first of all, let me see. Control V. There. Okay, this is a link to my website, my free website on Wix there. And it has some useful tools, things like conversion factors.
It hasn't been updated in a zillion years.
Yeah, it's just been sitting there forever. But there's a new project checklist, which is like 4 sheets of paper that will give you all the things you need to look at if you're looking at a new piece of property. What does it have? What does it have? What does it need? Things like that. And the other thing that's very useful there is the mining project economics calculator. And what that does, that allows you to put in raw data such as width of ore body, height of ore body, depth of ore body, grade of ore body, cost of mining, cost of milling, things like this, your stripping ratio, and then it will do all the calculations, price of the precious metals, what's your recovery percentage, what's your extraction percentage, all these things. And then it'll crunch the numbers for you and give you an idea whether it's likely to be profitable or not. Okay. It makes life real simple, and it's a great what if game playing tool. So if you're wondering, well, if I had a vein this wide and that long and this deep at this grade and I could do it, would I be able to make money? Punch in the numbers. You'll be able to figure out what conditions it would take to make money. Very handy. Now, I know Honey Bunny got here late and a few others. This week, was talking to some gentlemen who were working on a project, and it became obvious that they were fairly common and that it's real easy to bypass these steps before you attempt this step. Laboratory scale analysis, some detailed sampling and assaying of the ore body to find a theoretical ore body, to know how to get the valuable mineral out of said theoretical ore body, and then you test it on a pilot scale. Then and only then are you ready to start worrying about buying machinery and assembling a mill for a what you might call full scale or a low level of production. Okay. This is just the way it is. These steps here take effort. They take money. They don't make you much shiny in your pocket. And therefore, they're very easy to go, I don't need that. And you start coming down here and start building equipment and mill first. And yeah, and that's not a bad idea, Honey Bunny. The equipment that you buy for laboratory scale testing and pilot scale testing can be used project after project after project to do the exact same thing. The laboratory scale stuff can be used for process control. So it's not wasted money. Right now, for example, Eva's pretty much done dealing with resins and electrolytic precipitates and things like that. And now she's going to start working on the fire assaying of ores. We have a number of samples of ore that have been fire assayed, and she's going to be practicing that. So when we get in the field, we can do that. In roughly 2 months, we'll be up at the top of the hill and we'll be starting a project from scratch. Okay. We have the top of the hill where there's possibly something there. We don't even know. We know there's a mine 500 feet underground, which we can't get to without an enormous amount of expense and effort. So what is there that's on surface that we can get to? We don't know. We're going to have to find out. So you'll be able to see a lot of the exploration and early laboratory scale testing. In the laboratories, first, I say you got to find some stuff with some gold in it. In this case, gold or silver, whatever, valuable mineral, in quantities that would plausibly be possibly profitable. Then you go over here, and in the laboratory, you determine how much gold can you get out, how easy, at what cost. You're never going to get 100% recovery, but the question is, how much can you get, how efficiently, at how much cost? Okay. The simplest way to get gold out of hard rock is gravity separation. You pulverize the rock and you separate the gold. Shaker tables would be a very common way of doing that. Pulverizing rock is not easy. Pulverizing the rock to where the gold is broken away from the other rock particles varies tremendously with ore. So you have to test. There is no number. You can say, well, if you crush it to this, you're fine. Not the way to do it. You need to crush it, screen it, classify it, see what the gold value is in your head grade, do a simple gravity separation like panning. Just pan it so you got 20% left in the pan, 80% out of the pan. And you also need to settle your slimes too, if possible. If you got the money for that, 3 different samples: slimes, tailings, cons. See where the gold is. Okay. If the gold is in your cons and very little in the slimes or the tailings, you achieved liberation and you achieved a gravity separation. Goody goody. Go to the next stage, larger scale. Okay. See how much grinding you have to do to accomplish that. At what coarseness do you stop getting a good separation? All this stuff is real cheap to do here. Takes a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, not a whole lot of money, and the equipment's generally fairly simple, except for the crushing. Now, hand breaking of the rock to get smaller pieces and then a little chain mill, not terribly expensive. I've got something better, but I paid for it a long time ago, RC46. I can crush about 500 pounds an hour into a coarse sand. When we're up at the top of the hill, we should have it with us. The samples that we take, we will be crushing, splitting, hand panning right on site, saving some for fire assay. And that way we can see very, very quickly what rocks in what areas seem to have gold and which ones don't. Now, that will not necessarily give us an accurate representation of the golden rock, but as a general rule, if we can't hand pan any gold out of it, it probably doesn't have sufficient gold to make us money, even if it's got a whole lot of real fine gold. Okay, so it allows us, using what I call my speed panning technique, to quickly identify likely structures and follow them in real time. And that's real important because you can't just look at the rock and tell necessarily. After a while, where are you at, Shaggy? All around is tornadoes and fires? Wow, that's undesirable. Yeah, let's all cross our fingers for Shaggy there. That does not sound like good.
That's crazy.
Well, safety first, Shaggy. You keep an eye out. You take care of yourself and the people close to you. That's your number one priority here. Anyhow, so say this can be done fairly cheaply initially. It gets more and more expensive as time goes on and you get deeper and deeper into the project. Amen. Um, and then once you start getting down to the pilot scale testing, then you start having some pretty significant expenses, although you can keep it modest. And only after you've got a successful pilot scale process working from end to end do you start buying and assembling this equipment down here. You know, uh, that is the most common mistake I see people make besides just buying the wrong property. They get the equipment first and then try and figure out how to make it work with their ore. Sometimes the equipment you buy will not work with your ore. Never trust the specifications of a manufacturer in terms of will it do the job? What kind of throughput will you get? They almost never have the throughput that they tell you. That is almost always what you would call a best case scenario. And obviously, a best case scenario is probably not what you are. Okay. It can vary enormously depending upon certain complications. Certain processes simply won't work with a crap on certain ores. Gravity separation would work really well if it was coarse gold. Cyanide leach ain't going to work worth a crap. The gold's too coarse and it passivates. So, this is where you need to test against the manufacturer's equipment if you can. Usually manufacturers will allow you to run stuff through their equipment if you pay them a fee to do it. You have them custom process some of your ore. Make sure that it will work. Find somebody who's got what you think might work. Find somebody who's got an RP4 table or somebody who's got a jig or somebody who's got whatever and give it a try and see what happens. Say it's a lot cheaper to find out that device isn't going to work before you buy it. Okay. But this is really, really important. This is where most people make big mistakes. According to Chris, there was I think he said it was Sutter Gold or something, spent millions of dollars building a mill, wouldn't work with their ore. So they went broke because they spent all their money building the wrong thing, you know? And so I say, always test in the real world when possible, verify everything, trust nobody, and go step by step. It's annoying as heck to spend money on assaying and all this time testing these things. But if you don't wind up here, you wind up over here with something that doesn't work. Yep, you're absolutely right, Kodak. They rate generators with maximum short-term surge capacity. Don't try and run it at that capacity for 10 minutes. It's basically just start loads. Exactly. Maximum horsepower on an engine. That's when you're really pushing it to its limits. That's not what you want. You want it where it's running in its nice comfort zone. Things like that. So let's say verify all this stuff. If possible, always test it on a small scale or a limited expense basis first. Take it somewhere and run it on their machine before you buy their damn machine. Okay? It makes a big difference. Because even though, let's say, you think that table will work and you go and test it and that table does work, that's fine. But that crusher that you thought would work, it won't. So you saved the money there. Again, it's just one of those things that it's annoying. Very, very annoying. And as such, tends to get seriously overlooked. And that causes lots and lots of problems. This one here, too. You're not looking for a couple good samples. You're looking for an ore body. You're looking for something you can take sample after sample in a representative way and keep getting numbers that looks good. Problem with Montana B over there is the samples we took every 5 feet are not doing the same thing as the bulk material. Say it's difficult to tell exactly why, but even the best sampling program is not 100% accurate. In this case, there's probably some systematic difference. For example, when I was taking the samples, as they were hauling the material out of the decline, they might have been dribbling good quality ore on the floor. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's not looking real good. And after a few weeks of work there, we may pack that one up for now, until of course they inventory the gold and peg our dollar to the actual inventories of gold. Then we'll be in good shape. But
say no, because how much you want to bet if the government does that, they'll nationalize all minerals. There will be.
They can't nationalize it in the ground. Yep, they may try. But anyhow, as I say, it's just one of those deals where be ready for Murphy to show up on a regular basis. Murphy, he's really annoying, but he's also a resident, Huh. Okay, Kodak, interesting. So they just slap it together and don't care about the metal shavings and stuff, huh? Why? Well, doesn't surprise me. Anyhow, so does anyone have any questions at this point? So that was the main focus of today. And I'd say that's probably the biggest thing, besides people just buying a hole in the ground that doesn't have enough gold. Yes, Roberts, a gold pan, some kind of crushing apparatus. Now you can use a dolly pot, big steel mortar and pestle or something for small samples, but real quick, that's going to get real old. So a small chain mill, a chamber about this big with, like a little 2 horsepower motor, a Cobra crusher? A Cobra crusher is an intermediate size. It's a whole lot easier than smashing it by hand. That's probably going to be the one thing that'll really make a huge difference, because then you can do a lot of samples quick. Some kind of power crushing device. Okay. Then sieves. Yeah, you're going to want some sieves. I bought a thing from Keene years ago, and it was a set. It had a pan on top of a sieve holder, and it had 10 different sieves that could fit in the sieve holder. And there was enough spare room in there for a few other things too. So I've typically got like 2 or 3 of my small pans in there. Then there's the big pan that came with it, the sieve holder, a number of different sieves and stuff like that. A hydraulic jack, some pieces of steel. I've never done that. Although I tell you, if you have a good solid chunk of steel plate, like I actually found a piece of 1/2 inch plate laying on the road once that was like 200 pounds. Luckily, it was near my house, so I was able to just drag it over to the yard and then cut it up. But a 1/2 inch steel plate on the ground with some cinder blocks around it on 3 sides, so you can just take and throw a rock and smash it. That goes pretty quickly, you know. Let's see. Yeah, if you had a big press, sure. I would worry more about an impact mill than a jaw crusher first. It's not too hard to take a fist-sized rock and turn it into 1/2 inch rock with a hammer. But turning a 1/2 inch rock into 20 mesh sand with a dolly pot sucks. The big one.
Well, you've got that
Okay.
Mad Max that you made.
Oh yeah, but the other thing about my Mad Max, it fits on the Hilti. You can take. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I say. Yeah, I got my big demolition hammer can actually work the pestle on my big mortar. That's correct, honey bunny. Yeah. Say little things like that, but say when it comes to creating really fine stuff, you know, a little impact mill is probably the most bang for your buck. And but that's the thing that's going to annoy you the most, trying to do a proper sampling job. And I have, you know, an RC46, so I do bucket size samples whenever possible, crush them down to sand, and then put them through a splitter. And what's his name? Coulter at Mining Magnets was working on a little more laboratory size splitter that would work better for, you know, people that only have like a small impact mill or something like that. And and Honey Bunny's correct. You can take a cement mixer, throw some big cobbles in it, and use it to grind. The problem with that is you do get cross contamination and stuff. Okay, a cement mixer will tend to segregate your coarser gold and things. You also want to watch for cross contamination. You want to be able to clean your crushing thing out well. That's why the Stutenroth completely sucks for sampling. You know, hey Rob, how's it going? Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I don't know if you know it. She broke her back last fall too. Yeah, she was holding the door open for me at the mill, and a gust of wind came along and literally picked her up and threw her on the floor in the building. So she had a compression fracture of her L1, but she's getting better. And yeah, we're still having fun. We were going to try and get over there this spring, but right now my camper is sitting there with either a blown head or a blown head gasket, and my son-in-law is building me an engine, and it'll be here in a little over a month, and they're going to put it in. So I'm not sure when I can get over there, but we really wanted to do it this spring.
Maybe after Yellowstone?
That's right in the middle of the season, little one. The season ends in November. Between then and November, any day we're not working in the field is a day we've lost for the year. That's what's frustrating. Yeah, I say we had a nice plan. We would have probably been headed over there right about now. Unfortunately, say it didn't work out
Yeah,
because
I
of
want
that.
to get over there.
Yeah, I say we want to go over and see your mine. We want to go to the Olympic Peninsula.
Blue agates.
I got a friend
I want blue agates.
in Anacortes that has an extra muffle furnace. He's willing to give me give it to me. So it's probably going to be this fall before we can get over there. But yeah,
I want blue agates.
I know you want blue agates, little one. But anyhow, so yeah, we really were planning on being over there. Actually, right about this time. This would have been just about the right time. Yeah, we were. That was the plan. Take a flatbed over there because the camper has no room for anything big in it, and so the idea was take a flatbed over for the muffle furnace. Anyhow, take care, John. So, as I say, and how's everything going with where you're at, Rob? You may have left already. I think that's his call sign, ham radio call sign, honey bunny.
Oh, it's nice of him to drop by and say hi.
Thank you, Rob. As I say, we do want to get over there a lot, but it's kind of hard to do it on a bicycle. And I was hoping that my son-in-law could get the engine over here right about now, but they're kind of timing it for when my grandson gets out of school. And good, Rob. And so I'm going to have my son-in-law, both of my daughters, and my grandson all visiting at the same time, middle of May. So, as I just, we'll see what happens depending upon other things. We may get a week or so off somewhere in the middle of summer, which would be cool. We shall see how it all goes. I just don't have a lot of hope for that, but we shall see. But yeah, we are having a good time. I say we're living the life, Rob. So thank you very much.
So's he.
Mm-hmm. He's got the heck of a mind. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure that wasn't the first mine he stumbled into either. I'm sure it took a while before he either got what he wanted or developed it to the point where he wanted. Yeah, persistence is really important in this business. Things generally don't come easy. So, any other questions, anybody? This is a problem when Miner Jim's not here. I just got to handle it all myself, and I get boring after a while. I know. Sorry about that, folks. Oh. But yeah, we are having a good time. I'm very lucky to have a woman who loves me very much and takes good care of me and gives me good advice. Yep. We haven't made any ladder track yet, Chris. Thanks for the compliment, Robert. But we have all the pieces cut for, I think it's another 10 feet of ladder track. We just need to weld it all together. So it should only take like about an hour of work if we haven't lost anything over there. So, what is the sign of a bad professor? I know this one's going to be mean. What, Adam? Thank you, David. Oh, oh my goodness. It should be a fun summer. Got a lot of stuff to do. Really, Adam? I've never seen that happen. But yeah, that would be pretty ridiculous. He says a bad professor refuses to answer questions when they put out the call for questions. Any questions? Yeah, that would be pretty bad.
Seeing and hearing none.
I don't know how many bad professor I've had. I've had a couple good ones and a number of decent ones and some pretty so-so ones. But I don't know about really bad ones. Yeah. Any questions? Oh, we don't have time to answer that. One thing I knew this was going to happen, and I was so frustrated with the rest of the class. The professor had other things to do during the days we were scheduled for finals. And so he said, so if we can't settle on a date, we had just, a couple of possibilities. If we can't settle on a date, it's going to be a take-home final. Now, mind you, this was astronomy 202, sort of thing. It's like, no, not a take-home final. Don't do that. The only restriction was you cannot use a pre-written program to answer the questions. You can write your own program if you want, and the entire astronomy library is open for your use. There were 5 questions. I missed 3. And I took at least 6 hours on it. Yeah. Hey, Tricky, how's it going?
Kiss the babies.
Kiss the babies, yep. I haven't seen Rock Butcher anytime today. He would know the answer to that question you emailed me about. So I will go ahead and check with the organization we discussed, and I also try and see what Rock has to say about that, as he's pretty familiar with that process. I don't imagine it would be too difficult. I don't know. It depends on how talented they were, honey bunny. Jeff says, I have a boss who likes the Socratic method. Ask what I did wrong. My brain says if I knew something was wrong, I wouldn't have done it. Oh. Well, let's hope not, Tricky. Shouldn't be too difficult to get a number on it. I've had some teachers I wouldn't have minded. Oh. So that's another, sex-based difference. Everyone's like, well, that male teacher was a female student. Ooh! And then the guys, well, that male student with the cute teenage, teacher, all the guys are like, sweet. Why couldn't I have had that? The two sexes look at it entirely differently in general. Why did you drive a loader over the sidewalk? To get to the other side? Oh my goodness. Oh, well, honey bunny, I think Eva will tell you I'm at least a little bit romantic. Uh,
You are indeed.
oh, oh dearie. I wish it was that good. Are you antisocial or non-social, honey bunny? I mean, do you have active antipathy, or is it just you prefer to be kind of left alone? Because I'm not antisocial or non-social, but I don't feel comfortable with people unless it's a relatively small group. Okay, there you go, honey bunny. I like that. Would near boiling water help with fine gold recovery with gravity systems? Yeah, I mean the water would be less dense and less influential on fine gold. I think it would probably have an effect. It may be a fairly modest effect. I know that when we were dredging and the water temperatures were near freezing, they when they were panning the cons, they would want to use more lukewarm water and stuff rather than the cold water. And it wasn't just for the hands. It was because they said it did make a difference. The surface tension is less and things like that. And so I would imagine that the answer is yes to some extent. How much, I do not know. Okay, according to Chris, it's the surface tension changes that are even more intense. Okay, which sounds plausible to me, although I have no specific information on it. Add a pinch of table salt. Anyone else have any input on that? I think I've heard something to us of a similar. Anything with sodium, huh? Well, don't use sodium hydroxide though. Oh. Take care, Shaggy, and good luck. Let us know next week how things went. Okay, Roberts, thank you. Okay, Jim says it would have an effect, but there's other things that are generally more important. Roger that, Tricky. Okay, we won't worry unless it's 2 weeks and we still don't hear from you.
And kiss the babies.
Kiss the babies, Eva says. Jim says salt will also help break the clay. So if you had clay, apparently hot, salty water, just a modest amount of salt, right, Jim? As opposed to like a saturated solution or something, just a little bit. I wonder if the stuff we add to our solutions would help that too. I mean, if they just do that. Just something ionic. Yeah, we're throwing some ionic stuff in there for sure. So that's what it is, huh? Yes, Roberts, they do. As a general rule, if all you're looking for is gold, You can probably do a gravity separation easier than a flotation, and they work about on the same size particles. But if you had sulfide minerals and stuff like that, where your gold or your silver was, then the switching to flotation might be a substantial improvement. Really tricky. Be careful with warm salt water. It can also dissolve gold due to the chloride ion, huh? Yeah. Interesting.
Well, that makes sense.
Sodium monofluorophosphate will also chelate out reactive metals. But only at superheated steam temperatures, she expects. Okay. I'm not planning on using any superheated steam in the near future, so hopefully I don't need that. One thing I really need to figure out in the intermediate term is just how many times I can use the stripping solution and how effectively it can be regenerated over the long term. Is there stuff that I can do that will basically allow us to use it forever, or is there a certain point where I just got to throw it away? I know that bromine is even better at dissolving gold than chlorine. I don't know about fluoride. I don't think so, because I believe you can, yeah, as Chris is saying, you can use hydrofluoric acid to dissolve the quartz away from gold, but it leaves the gold behind. Darn this chemistry stuff, it's also very complicated. I prefer more basic physics like a gravity separation. But oh well. Yeah, if we were to be mining, you know, silver ore and stuff, then we probably have to get out my Rogue Wave and use it, because we need a continuous scalping of the heavies. Anything else would quickly plug up. I have something better than a wave table, Roberts. We had a wave table, we had a Deister table. I looked at those and thought about some stuff and created a rather unique device that will recover the really fine gold of a wave table, but in a continuous flow situation where you're not like sucking it up with a vacuum like on a standard action mining table. Yeah, it's sitting over at Lawrence right now. Yeah, that probably, David, that would be my guess. Actually, I call it the Rogue Wave. Okay. Because first of all, it sounds cool. And secondly of all, it also has a little bit of it makes sense. It's good for the marketing, you know. I say I can use a little wordplay there. And yeah, well, other people's wave tables are tedious, Chris. Mine aren't.
You can put a lot of material over that thing in a hurry.
Yeah, it moves. It's continuous flow operation, and yeah, it works pretty well. Gets pretty fine gold too. I have something better if all you have is gold. Yeah, it uses, in the final cleanup section, it uses a wave table type action to clean the gold. It's a nice, oh, what am I thinking? Hybrid. It's a nice hybrid table. I like it, you know. Um, Probably not a significant issue, honey bunny. I mean, first of all, if you're using fluorine or hydrogen fluoride or anything like that, the hazards just go up astronomically. But there's stuff that'll dissolve gold pretty fast. If you need speed, um, if you needed speed of dissolution, um, a simple aqua regia works pretty darn good. Um, okay, honey bunny, maybe we'll see what happens. If you need something like that, we can talk. Say the other thing might be those impact mills. You know, has anyone tried gravity separation using a fluidized bed? Not through air fluidization, through agitation fluidization. Yes, um, and it's not too bad. But in an agitation where you're using a horizontal agitation to try and maintain the fluidization, it only works in fairly thin layers. Um, but it does work pretty well and it gets pretty fine gold. Okay. If you look back in the old things, look on the triple thet hydromatic jig, and that, um, has some stuff there. The problem with the Keen Hydromatic was fluidization sucked. So I had to, as usual, what what comes from the manufacturer didn't work too well. Now, to be fair, Keen stopped making the Hydromatic because it had such a tight set of operating parameters that it was really hard to keep the customers happy because you had to get things working just right and everything just right, and so they literally stopped making it. But I was able to, I found one and bought it, and then used it to learn some basic operating principles. And then Prospector Trip came up with an idea, and then I kind of worked on that idea, and I came up with something that works pretty well for recovering really fine free milling gold from a process stream where you're not trying to get anything except the gold, you know? Yeah, it's maintaining the proper balance of forces that's always the trick, honey bunny. And the other problem with an air fluidized bed, rock has a specific gravity of about 2.5, and gold is 19. So in air, the difference is 7.6. The gold is 7.6 times heavier than the rock in air. On the other hand, if you put it in water, it now becomes 18 divided by 1.5, or 12 times the density difference. And therefore, if you're using a water matrix to do your separation in, you have a greater difference in the relative specific gravities of the gold versus the rock, because the rock is so close to the density of the water that it really has a significant amount of buoyancy, you know. I've never seen a multi-gravity separator plan from Mosley. Let me write that down. Triple gravity separator, is that what you said? A multi-gravity separator. Multi-gravity separator. Richard Mosley. Okay. Okay, I'll look that one up and see if I can learn something. Yeah, that might be useful, but then you're dealing with a lot of soluble lead too, so that creates another issue. Um, One thing that can be done, and this is kind of funny, but they make a magnetized version of lignin sulfonate. They basically hook little, iron atoms onto the molecules or something to that effect. And so if you have a non-magnetic like gold, you can actually take this liquid and increase the magnetic field to give you whatever effective specific gravity you want. You can make it a specific gravity of, let's say, 4.5. So the rock floats off the top. It can't penetrate into the lignin liquid, but the gold can settle right in. It's a kind of dial a heavy media separator. It's pretty cool. Never done it myself, but that way you're using a non-toxic liquid as your heavy medium, and you can say just by how much magnetic field do you use determines its effective density. And so that's a real interesting way to do that. It's used on a laboratory scale. I don't know if it's ever been used on a production scale, even a small production scale, but it's used to where they really want to do a precise split on things, like, because they can literally just put the stuff in there, kind of stir it up, make sure it's all wet, and then just start cranking up the magnetic field, and stuff will float to the top, and you can skim it off, and that's the specific gravity. And you crank it up some more, and other stuff floats to the top, and you can separate it with precision. That would probably work for placer gold pretty well, Chris. Don't know the usefulness on hard rock samples. Maybe not, Honey Bunny, but regulatory wise and dealing with other people, it might be. I say apparently this technology has been around a while, but as I say, it's used on a laboratory scale. You just have an electromagnet that you just adjust, and whatever specific gravity you want to within reason, you can get. It's kind of a weird idea, but it's like, okay, that's cool. So that was an interesting device. It'd be fun to have one of those. That would be so cool. Anyhow. Oh. Yeah, if you're ever in the neighborhood, Honey Buddy, make sure you let us know. There's a couple of devices I make that you might be interested in. That was pretty damp. I was having trouble getting it through the screen, Chris. But yeah, I in some cases that might work just fine. No, lignin sulfonate is not magnetic. However, by attaching iron atoms to it, you can make a magnetic lignin sulfonate. Say it's specifically, it's for laboratory testing. Magnetic lignin sulfonate was what they were talking about when I was talking. They may have come up with a better magnetic liquid now. You need a magnetic liquid with a relatively low viscosity. Okay. And from there, let's say it's simple. Now, obviously, if you have magnetics like magnetite or something like that, that's not going to float on it because you're making it denser. But yeah, so pretty, it's a pretty cool principle, you know, because unlike, oh, say a centrifuge where everything gets heavier, it only makes the magnetics get heavier. You know, lignin. And I don't know if it's a pH. I think it's F, but you might be right. I think it's F though. Sulfonate. I think, yeah, look up a couple of things that are heavy metal. Honey Bunny, she spelled it correctly. Okay. It's a byproduct of making paper. When you NIN, not M as in Mike, but N as in Nancy. So just look up above there. Honey Bunny spelled it properly. When you make paper out of wood, paper is basically cellulose fibers. Wood is a composite material, cellulose fibers in a lignin matrix. To release that, the fibers, by reacting the lignin with, I think it's sulfuric acid. That's what they do in a pulp mill. But anyhow, it turns it from an insoluble lignin to soluble lignin sulfonate, and then they separate that from the cellulose. And they use it for a number of things. For example, they make artificial vanilla out of it, and the it's a waste product of the paper production, but it's also used. They use it on roads a lot. It's basically a glue. They just spray it on the roads. It dries out. It glues it all together. If the water makes the difference 12 times versus air 7 times, well, that's why you almost always use a water matrix, an environment instead of air. Recirculating water works worse when it gets muddy because it gets more viscous. It becomes thicker. There's more internal friction, and therefore it has much more trouble. Think of if you're dropped a little rock in water versus dropping it in syrup. And that's why. They add dissolved magnetite into lignin sulfonate. Okay. But anyhow, let me just, I'm thinking that you're asking a question there. Where's my?
On the bed.
On the bed, huh? Ah, there it is.
The goddess knows all.
If not, refer to Rule 1.
Exactly.
Okay. So, let's get two situations. You have air and water. Rock, which starts at basically a 2.5. Okay. And gold at 19 grams per cc. Now, obviously, different rocks are different densities. Most rocks are in this neighborhood. Okay. So if you take 19 divided by 2.5, you get the ratio of 1 to 7.6. Okay. On the other hand, if it's in water, both of these displace an equal volume of water, so the buoyancy drops them by 1 gram per cc. So the rock becomes 1.5 grams per cc in the water, and the gold becomes 18 grams per cc in the water. And so if we divide 18 by 1.5, you wind up with 12. So the ratio is 1 to 12 or 12. Therefore, the relative difference becomes greater here than that. Let's divide by 7.6. Okay. So this is like 1.5 times. 1.5 times the relative difference. That's why water does a better job separating than air does.
So if you had two metals, if you had a bunch of different metals in your rock, and those metals were closer together in specific gravity, using water would be even more important, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just confused.
Pretty much, Roberts. Yeah, the mud also adds density, but the difference is less important than the difference in viscosity. Okay. Yeah. So that's the problem with the clay particles and stuff, is it increases the viscosity more than it increases the density. Okay, Jeff. So, and this is also why if you had a fluid that was, well, let's say you dialed up your heavy fluid, and let's say you had 5 grams per cc, the rock would float, and the gold would go down. I mean, now they're not settling at different rates, they're going in entirely different directions. And pyrite would basically be kind of neutral density. It would kind of float around, it would gently float to the surface of this. Okay. So that's why they like to use these for what they call heavy media separation. Hey, Dan, how's it going? That makes sense to everybody there? Say, the problem is it has to be something that actually weighs more. Or in this case, I say where you're applying a magnetic field, it effectively weighs more to everything that isn't magnetic. If you were to use a centrifuge or something, then it doesn't work as well. Those high G separators and stuff try and use a similar sort of effect to get the gold to settle faster, but the rock also settles faster. So it's kind of hard to do. You're under a foot of snow Friday. Today you got suntanned, huh? Yep. Hey, Eve and I are doing great. Don't know if you saw the video. We did a couple trips last week to check out conditions at the various projects, but then we just drove around and to explore areas we've never been before. We've never been to Lincoln or White Sulphur Springs or Livingston or Bozeman or, you know. So, and we had some really pretty scenery and stuff like that. You know, yes, muddy water would be heavier, but it's also much more viscous, and that's the problem. It becomes stickier, and therefore things can't settle nearly as well. Could be. Not sure, honey bunny. Yep. So there's always various effects that are quite often, working in opposite directions. Yes, they do, honey bunny. And some heavy media separations would use heavy minerals that are finely divided, that don't add as much viscosity, but add a lot more density than something like clay. Let's say clay doesn't add a whole lot of density compared to, say, barite or something to that effect. You know, so they have various ways, and I'm not an expert, but I know they play these games in the lab so they can see what could work in the real world. Oh. Oh. Okay. Let me gravity mining. Okay. Save that one. Okay. Thank you, Tricky. I got it saved. Oh. So anyone else, if anyone else is interested, Tricky just posted a thing on a different gravity separation device there. So you can look that up if you wish. Oh.
Coulter over there mining magnets might like that.
Could be, yeah. You were looking at floating stuff, yeah. Depending upon what it is you're trying to float, there's different techniques of doing it. Gold will float using standard flotation techniques, but there's a certain minimum particle size where you can't get it to stick to the bubbles anymore, and there's a certain maximum size that's too heavy to be lifted by bubbles. I think in that case, honey bunny, it has to do with the surface chemistry on the gold particles. The cyanide tends to passivate the gold, as I recall, and the lead nitrate prevents that passivation process. I believe that's how that works. Chris, if you know and want to jump in. Oh. Yeah, there's various things where we're adding a little bit of something can help out. Yeah, that's my thought, Chris. It has to do with passivation of the gold in the cyanide solution, and the lead nitrate prevents that. Notice that she also says 10 to 100 milligrams lead nitrate per kilogram of gold. It's not per kilogram of ore, per kilogram of gold. So it seems to be directly related to the gold itself. And I say that's my recollection, but I'm not sure. Everything lighter than metal oxides, you probably want to get in the 3.5 to 4 range then. I think think hematite, magnetite are around a 5 specific gravity, if I recall correctly. Oh, dear. Yep. So the one thing is, if it's a magnetic metallic oxide, it's going to make it even heavier. If you were to use a saturated chemical solution of salt, even if it was just sodium chloride, it's going to buoy things to a certain extent. Of course, you're going to have the same viscosity issues. It's going to be more viscous. But there may be other things that you can dissolve. Oh, by the way, Honey Bunny brought something up. You can buy tungsten powder. Now, tungsten is basically the same density as gold within a very little percentage. It's almost identical. So I bought some 500 mush tungsten powder once so that I could do testing on it to see how does that work compared to 500 mesh gold. And it works really well. But if you ever mix it with your gold, you have to chemically separate it because that tungsten is so close. Yeah, you're not going to get it. It just blends in there perfectly. So I say, if you want to practice stuff or test something, you can use tungsten as a very good replacement for gold. Okay, assuming you can get the particle sizes you're looking for, because it is, it's also a 19. Lead is only a 10. Good night, David. Yeah, Honey Bunny. Yeah, you could easily do a magnetic separation first, so you don't have to deal with that, and then, put it in the heavy mineral or the heavy media separator. Oh. Oh, gosh. I'm getting a little tired myself. Any advice of what to look for at a patent claim that a commercial company just finished mining? They leased it from the owner, just took the stuff on top and left. It was a load claim. You're going to need to do some sampling. Did they bury everything again? Did they fill in the hole? Or is the hole still there? Was it a placer claim or you said it's a load claim, but were they mining placer or were they mining load? They caved the shaft. Well, I get really annoyed about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, they caved it because it's a liability issue. They're walking away. They don't want to have to deal with anything. Check the dumps. When they were digging stuff out and piling it up on the side there, it was too low a grade for the what do you call it?
For their economics.
Yeah, it was uneconomic for them. So look for dumps or anything like that, and try and get an idea from that. But yeah, it makes it tough. They took everything off site to process. Yeah, you'd almost have to drill or something, or reopen the shaft. Tungsten is highly combustible, Honey Bunny? Okay, Roberts. You sure about that? I mean, that's what they used to make, light bulb filaments out of. Yes, I know they didn't use air in there. Yeah, gold will definitely melt faster. Tungsten has a higher melting temperature by quite a bit. But pyrophoric as a powder. Then again, so is iron. Yeah, I don't know. It didn't come with special warnings.
Yeah, I didn't say anything about do not use near open flame.
And then if you created tungsten oxide, how hard is that to get away from the gold? Don't know. I say you could probably use some wet chemistry somewhere, something that'll dissolve tungsten but not gold, or vice versa. Well, Chris says you can separate them magnetically in an airstream by inducing a magnetic field in one and the other. Yeah.
Yeah, we all keep one of those around the house.
Check the runoff downstream. Doesn't sound like there's any downstream runoff. They just dug a hole and hauled everything off and then caved the top. Okay, Chris. Cool. One's basically magnetically attracted, one's magnetically repulsed. So yeah, and they're falling. Every powdered metal is combustible. To a greater or lesser extent. I don't think, like powdered platinum or gold would be terribly combustible. That's why tungsten light bulbs burn when they break the bulb. What is the gas inside a light bulb? A tungsten bulb? Yeah, you can make a bomb out of wheat flour too. You know? Vacuum, okay. It's soluble. Yes, I would imagine that tungsten would be soluble in something that gold isn't, or vice versa. It's highly soluble in several acids. Well, that should make it pretty simple then. So I was just doing it because I wanted to test some devices, and it's like, this way I got plenty of stuff to test. I know exactly what I got. Huh, Dan? Yeah, they hauled it all off, honey bunny. They dug it, threw it in a truck, and hauled it off site for processing. There are no tailings on site. Yeah. Yeah, aluminum powder is pretty ugly. Yeah, that's pretty reactive stuff. Which statement is not true, honey bunny? There's a lot of them right above there, and I'm not sure which is which. Okay. Gold, silver, platinum, osmium, ruthenium, or rubidium will not burn. Interesting about the silver. Gold, platinum, those, not surprising. Silver, okay. Don't have a osmium, it's in platinum group. Don't know about ruthenium or rubidium. Those are kind of odd things, so I have no idea. But yeah, that was my thought. There would be certain things that are so inert that they're not likely to oxidize at the speeds that you would need. I would imagine when machining certain metals, you might have to be careful that the chip isn't hot enough to ignite too. That's correct, honey bunny. Now, this is not horribly unusual. For example, when people are out drilling ore bodies and stuff, quite often they take all the drill cuttings. And that's because they don't want anyone else to be able to get any information from those drill cuttings, even if they throw them away somewhere else. Yeah, you'll see a drill hole and there's nothing around it, and that's why, for secrecy. We spent $10 a foot on this drill hole. We're not going to give any information to somebody else. Got it, honey bunny. I understand now. Probably the more precise statement would be almost all metals will burn in air if finely enough divided and ignited. For example, I know gold is more reactive with bromine than even with chlorine. So in a bromine atmosphere, finely divided gold might burn. I don't know. Oh. Hey, not sure. Yeah, sometimes things go off on tangents. Oh. Anything else, anybody? You betcha, Tricky. You be careful. Don't get in a hurry. Stay safe. We'll do our best to do the same. Yeah, ozone's pretty reactive too, Chris. I would guess it would probably burn in fluorine too, but I don't know. Yeah, Dan, it's going to be about roughly 6 weeks. And part of that is we got to get the truck fixed. The engine won't be here until middle of next month. But we're also, we haven't even been able to get to the mill. I need to get the two crushers, the RC46 and the Stoughton Roth, refurbished and ready for the season. We got to replace the door to the lab, which got destroyed in that windstorm. We have to pump off the rain covers, get the rain and melted snow off of the covers. At the mill, we need to remove the precipitation cover off of the ore stockpile to let it start drying. Did you write down the stuff, Dan? Because if you didn't, I'm gonna have to get all that stuff again. Didn't you you sent me a take care, Tricky. Yeah, that's right. You made prints. That's right. Tricky has left the building. Oh. Yeah, they were pretty simple design, honey bunny. They're rectangular plates One has a single half-inch hole with a countersink in the middle, and the other has two half-inch holes with countersinks in them. It's centered on each end. Oh. That's cool, Honey Bunny. Okay, anyone else got any questions here? Yeah, they're very simple, Honey Bunny. And the idea is Dave has the equipment and stuff he was going to make. Just basically cut some up out of mild steel and send them here, and then we'd hard face them and see how well they last. Without the hard facing, they wouldn't last worth a crap, but they're probably not going to crack nearly as bad as the high alloy ones. Okay, Honey Bunny. No problem. Believe me, I can't design anything that requires complex machining. Okay. Most of my stuff is done with a welder and a grinder. They like my impact mill. It's all done basically with hand tools. I had a drill press, chop saw, grinder, welder. That's pretty much it. So, things like getting that rotor lined up on the shaft and everything. Again, it was just planning out how to do it. Not sure. Eva has some experience with that. As long as the plates will not, be brittle, that'd be cool. Gold Pandan. Okay, little one. Any experience making caustic soda from ash, and how many cycles before it becomes effective? That is the question.
I've made lye. The kind you float an egg on, so to speak. Well, you want hardwood ash. You want it packed really tight. And my grandmother used to run the liquid back through the ash at least a half a dozen times, and we were always adding fresh ash. Always.
So, your grandmother said it's important to get fresh ash on a regular basis?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, but there are times when stale ash just don't work.
Yep. Yes, Jeff. You want to make sure that all the information that the person leasing the claim acquires is turned over to the person that owns the claim when they're done with the lease agreement. Now you can have it being turned over as it's done, but in general, they aren't going to want to do that until it's over, because you're giving the owner more information. But it's I say it would depend on the specifics. If it was a big mining company, typically they would turn it over after a certain period of time, after a year, or until when they leave the claim, all this stuff becomes yours because they're now no longer worried about it. But yeah, you definitely want to get all the information they develop. Not sure asks, he's using red oak as the wood. Would a harder wood like locust give better results?
Well, we didn't have locust in Maine.
She
My
said
grandmother liked oak.
her grandmother preferred oak.
My grandmother preferred oak or ash.
Or ash.
A good ash tree if you've got one hanging around.
Okay.
But the key thing is to always make sure that you're recycling your liquid through your fresh ashes, and you want to make sure that you keep your liquid receptacle covered.
Okay. Keep it covered and keep recycling.
Right, and
Recyculating?
keep recirculating.
Recyculating. I like that.
The floated egg test actually does work, okay? But I would suggest a specific gravity test if you wanted to
Yeah.
get a good idea, or a pH test.
Not sure says boar beetles killed the ash off. Well, that's undesirable. We're having that problem up here with the pine trees.
Pine beetles, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you just want a well-seasoned hardwood. Also, don't use spalted wood. Spalted wood doesn't work as well.
And don't use spalted wood. It doesn't work as well. Oh. Okay, any other questions out there? Well, I'm really glad those guys, gave me the idea for tonight. I think it was pretty productive and informative. The one of the problems is I keep doing stuff, but I forget that new people come in on a regular basis. So there's certain things I just need to repeat every once in a while. Cool, not sure. Yeah, Eva's got a lot of knowledge I don't, and vice versa. So it works out pretty well. Time is of the essence, Honey Bunny says. Does that mean as soon as soon after it's burned, you need to put it in the leach barrel? You don't want to just.
My grandmother used to put it in pretty immediately.
Yeah. Eva would agree to that if that's what you were saying.
I don't know whether that was preference or not, but basically, as soon as it was cooled.
As soon as it was cooled,
and if
she
it was
said.
A humid day, even sooner, if possible.
A humid day, even quicker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dry days, it would sit around for a while, but.
Okay. All righty. Any other questions here? Going once. Okay. Yeah, I think number 2 is correct, honey. Okay, going twice. All righty, I think we're going to call it a week. We made it to our 4 hours. Cool, Honey Bunny. Don't forget to look at the first hour when you get a chance. All righty, well, let's call it a night. And still not a whole bunch going on this week, unless we get the road open to the mill. Then I got a lot of work to do. Okay, good night, Honey Bunny, Chris, everyone else. You guys take care.
Everybody.
Thanks for hanging around. Happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. Stream. And